morning. Good morning. How is everybody today? I am tired. Very, very tired. My name's Debbie. Hey, everybody. Welcome to my channel. We are on part 12 of the Robert Bardo murder trial. He unalived Rebecca Schaeffer in 1989. She was an actress that he was obsessed with, and he lived in, Arkansas? Arizona? I don't remember. But he went to California, and she wasn't as friendly as he thought she should be. So he went back to her house, Arizona. Thank you, Judy. I love my Judy. She helps me remember the details that I forget. Yeah, so she wasn't, they always say, don't meet your heroes, right? So she wasn't as nice to him as he wanted her to be. So he killed her. Hey, Wiggles. Hey, Jennifer, who's probably gone already. No, Marty. Where's Marty? Everybody else will end up. They'll file in eventually. And here's Judy's trivia that I forgot to read on Friday. I'm so sorry. Rebecca's mom, Dana, passed in 2022 due to surgery complications. After Rebecca's death, she closed her counseling practice and became an advocate for the Brady Bill. That's the guy that got shot by John Hinckley Jr., right? Is that right? The guy that shot President Reagan? Dana's greatest professional achievement was the creation of her one-woman show, You in Midair, in which she wrote about Rebecca's story with light, joy, love, and humor. So, well, now you got to Google Brady Bill. Okay, go get it. No. He just does hand gestures like, you guys know he lives here and he's married to me and he talks to me, right? He does hand gestures and expects me to figure out what he's saying. Okay, so what is the Brady Bill? Like, I know who Brady was, and after, like... I don't know what the Brady Bill is, but I know who Brady was. So, yeah. He and it. Wiggle said hi. Are you leaving? No, we'll run the truck real quick. Oh, okay. It's cold here, y'all. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I went to Orlando this weekend. And this is Florida weather, y'all. Saturday, I started off in the morning with a jacket, a hat, a scarf, and gloves. It was 36 degrees. Then it warmed up into the 70s, and I was just in a t-shirt. And then when the sun went down, it stayed warm. I was just in a t-shirt, and I was fine. Yesterday, I took my jacket. Is it on inside out again? Oh, no. It just looked like it. Yesterday, I took my jacket with me in case I needed it, but it was warm. I didn't need it. And I had my air conditioner on all the way to Orlando. And then when the sun went down, I was freezing and I had to put my jacket on. And I had the heat on the way home. Florida weather is crazy, y'all. Can't decide what it wants to do. But I got to see Fonzie last night, y'all, in person. Henry Winkler. It was so cool. And I didn't record. I was going to record it, but I said no, because then I'm going to get all kinds of copyright claims and stuff, because I had a bunch of Christmas music. But my friend Yuta Adventures live streamed it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing they do at Epcot. It's a candlelight processional. I don't know how many performers is in this. The professional singers, they're called the Voices of Liberty. They're on a tier in the center that's shaped like a Christmas tree, and it has a giant star at the top. And then the rest of the singers come down the aisles, and they're holding candles. And it's got a full orchestra in the front. So the people holding the candles file onto the stage, and then they sing. And then they have a celebrity that stands at the podium and reads the Christmas story in between the songs. And last night and tonight is Henry Winkler. And my friends, Jen and Mike, Magic Adventures, that come in the chat sometimes, they are going to be there tonight live streaming it. So if you guys want to watch it live tonight, they will be live streaming it. And on Friday, Gary Sinise is going to be there. And hopefully I will be live streaming it on my Disney Channel. So if you want to see it with Gary Sinise doing the narration, I will be doing that on Friday. No more. So I will remind you guys of that on Thursday, because I'm not going to be streaming on Friday. I'm going to be in Orlando again. But it's really, really beautiful, moving, touching thing. And from what people have told me that have like seen different people do it, they've all said that Gary Sinise was the best one they've ever seen. I've seen Susan Egan at, like, on other people's live streams, not in person. Susan Egan, Ashley Eckstein, Ralph Macchio, and now Henry Winkler. And Henry Winkler so far has been the best, but I have heard that Gary Sinise does it the best, so I'm going on. I love Gary Sinise anyways. That I would rather see him than anybody else. Brady is an act of the U.S. Congress that mandated federal background checks on firearm purchasers in the United States. It also imposed a 5-day waiting period on until the NICS was implemented. NICS, National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Oh, okay. Well, I'm familiar with that. I just didn't know that's what the Brady Act was. Oh, cool. Okay. Sweet. I thought, I didn't realize that's why we had background checks for guns. I guess I just thought we'd been doing that since way before that. I just thought it was always a thing. Huh. Cool. And I also have a new favorite ride. Tron was good. Guardians of the Galaxy is better. The seats turn. It's like a roller coaster where the seats turn. Okay. We are still on Dr. Dietz. And I think we have more of the videos of Bardo.
Present Dr. Dietz is on the stand. Let's resume.
She's not I saw, but she was sitting like something there I saw in the movie.
Oh, I almost forgot. I've got my laptop is on Law and Crime. They're not even in the court yet. It says 9:00. They will be in court, and I will watch this. We're gonna watch this until I know whether or not there's a verdict. Well, until 3. If there's no verdict, we're gonna stop this at 3, and I'll still watch and wait for a verdict, and then I'm gonna. He just likes himself a little too much. That's all. He is insufferable. I don't get it. Why do people... Well, I guess I do get it. People that are smart and good at their jobs and have like multiple degrees and awards and connections, and why do they think so highly of themselves? Like, just because people, like, you're good at your job, that doesn't make you like a special person. It just makes you good at your job. Like, why do you think you're better than other people just because you're good at your job? But I guess if people are all the time telling you how good you are, I guess some people just can't help. But I don't know. I'm not like that. Like, I still think I'm like, like, why do you guys show up in my chat every morning? Why are you here? I'm just a stupid person that knows how to work StreamYard. James Rady was Reagan's press secretary. When he died in 2014, his death was ruled a homicide due to his death resulting from years of complications from being shot. See, I agree with that. What was that dude's name? Do you guys remember Mike on I'll Talk with Mike? He covered a trial where the guy went pro se. It started off as a carjacking, I think. This is my scroll for the day, apparently. I'm so old. It started as a carjacking, and then it turned into a home invasion. It was some old lady, a guy, and I think he had an accomplice too, and she pled guilty, but this guy went pro se and defended himself. Bradley, I think, was his last name. And the lady, and he raped her, and then I can't remember if he robbed the house or took the car. You guys know I'm not good with details. Anyway, she died, but she died like months later. So he didn't get charged with her murder. And I think that's wrong. Like, she had a heart attack. Probably from all the stress of being carjacked and home invasion and robbed, and right? Like, I think he should have been charged with her murder. But no, they didn't.
June 30th or July 1st. I've seen it twice. I went to see it twice. And I was kind of upset at the scene in the movie where Rebecca Schaeffer's although she's covered, she's a bit of active patriarchy. I'm kind of upset because I thought it was portraying, that she may do something more later or something like that on another movie. It seemed to bother me a great deal. And I simply want to keep going to get a fire alarm, and that was beginning of July. So I kept talking to my brother to try to encourage him, we would get a photograph. And one day, after I get off the line, jacket box. It's on Friday, I just got paid my paycheck. He told me, I remember him, he telling me about the Egyptian, they know me, I remember it was affordable, which was cost $130 for something like Johnson's gun shop in Tucson, Arizona. So he picked me up from working on weekends, the first thing I stayed bank to catch my check, and I went to the Johnson's gun store. And they told us that goods were they didn't have that gun, but they sold it. So we're kind of disappointed about because we really did want to get that gun for pilot practice. And I still wasn't sure if I was really committed myself to getting a gun. Within his name, because I didn't really want to hurt him that way because he was going to go to the Air Force. And the reason why I got him to get a gun because I was only 19 and he was over 21. I needed him. I didn't have a gun with him. If I was 21, I'm pretty sure I could get a firearm. But I just needed to have a criminal record, so okay, now we're in the Jones gun store. I was looking on the cat, so I purchased two guns there. It says $1,000. I seem to remember that gun store, Clark, whatever, the salesperson, and found us a 357 Magnum. Armani of Rossi in Brazil, 357 Magnums, a 4-inch barrel, blue steel, revolver, and with wood grips and my brother checked it out. First, one of the criteria from the person was affordability, but that's what made it easy to get because I was from the bunch of kids. And so we did first, and he bought it, and we were kind of excited, And one of the things that we were excited about too was because we were at the lethal weapons, I guess, and we wanted to get a gun like the Beretta that it uses to go target practice. So I went target practice with my brother before. I was in front of this 9mm Taurus. It's an imitation, it's called an imitation. Anyways, now we found that gun after all. I had wanted a gun before I knew Rebecca Schaeffer, because it's something my brother was interested in too, because his friends always had guns and he was always calling them out because he couldn't have something. And now we had a 4-inch barrel 357 Magnum Brazilian made of Armani Rossi and his blue steel, and we're excited about it. So he's confident he told me he's going to get a trigger off for it. But I say, we'll get that later. I was trying to put it off. He said, no, I don't want it. One of the things I want to do is get a trigger off because I want this gun secured, I said, okay, we'll get that later. Don't have to worry about that, man. We're going to have this gun for a while, so the game was first on July 9th on Friday, 1989. Anyways, on the following Monday, I went to the Jones gun store by myself to purchase some bullets. And there I guess I shocked 357 Magnum bullets, a special thing that comes deep penetration. One reason why I chose hollow pointless, because the first Lethal Weapon movie is the bullet that Mel Gibson mentioned on, and there seemed to be very effective bullets, and I really didn't care for full metal jacket bullets. And I purchased those, and I was still thinking whether or not I should, because I was thinking of seeing Rebecca doing many obstacles, and I was going to make sure I had firepower to stop those obstacles. So I was thinking kind of losing, and seemed to be my last chance this year. This is the 4th time. I had no idea that I'd be very successful in seeing her. Mine was Monday where I purchased the bullets. Okay, the July 12th. On July 13th, I put in a job from Jack in the Box. I do my last time I ever worked in there. People never kind of saw that I was late, I told them that I was going to go to LA, And I think I recall making arrangements with my sister Janet that I had one portrait there, which I had taken. One of those I had in her album, I put it in there, and I went to go to her house, because I visited her, give it to her, but I didn't have enough time. So, I I had, I had the gun and bullets and everything. I had her address, I had the ticket from my sister's son. Put that like a salvage bag, I had a postcard, I was gonna, in case I saw it, I showed it to her. And I had the book to capture the right with me. That's the newest book I had was probably the size of the postcard I wanted to project it, No, I read the book twice before and I really didn't see, I couldn't see a sense of hate in that book. Or Mark David Shelby feel the need to kill John Lennon. I still didn't have the book with me, That really didn't have much to do with Rebecca Schaeffer's death. It was much as to use it, I guess, to the Joshua tree and that construction my guns with. But the events that play out, I couldn't even plan out because I really wasn't sure. I made preparations. Made preparations to go to LA. Remember, it was a Sunday night before it happened. My brother went out to use the gun, his friends, they took their guns, and started shooting at the more part of Tucson. And I remember having a phone conversation with my sister on Sunday. I think it was July 16th, 1939, and she had asked me about the letter, and I told her, she said that America told her about some girl named Rebecca, and it was like the girl from my sister's son. My sister asked me about, I told her, yeah, my sister says, is that well, I gave him the service and took her, that you want to kill her and then kill yourself. I said, well, that's about it, And she constantly, she wants to know about it because this is not something, she knew me taking care of America a lot of times, we were very close when I went to her wedding in November 1988. We were very close, and I seemed like a very normal person. And but she didn't see anything wrong with me. She didn't seem to understand how deep it was what I felt. And we talked, and she said, if I ever did go to LA, before anything happens, just call her. She says, she kept repeating, promise me that you'll call me. She says, don't do this, because America likes to talk to you. She's someone that, of all the people on the phone, she's the one who will talk to you, because you're very close to me. So I always take care of America. I was very close to my niece, She's, we're so close home to it, come to Tennessee, I have an offset of hiring you to live with them, with her husband, Ken. That's something about it, I still wanted to go to LA to see what later, because I could never be at peace until I got over there in LA, and when my sweets are. So I told her that I would, and I called her if I did make it to Los Angeles. And if I did, before anything happened, he called her. So I took a green room. That was it. July 17th. July 17th, at midnight, I had taken the Greyhound bus to Los Angeles. Arrived in the morning, July 18th. It was very dark. I arrived in the bus station at 6. Avenue, I believe. Downtown LA. Okay, I arrived there. I arrived when it was dark and I was still working. Waiting for one. It was around 3 or 4 o'clock a.m. As soon as I got off the bus, I remember a black homeless man. He was very desperate. He said he got kicked out of the car and said he didn't show me to the bus house or anything about LA. He helped me protection. So I invested the guy, And in case anything happened, I had the guy, In case there was some bubble that happened probably before happened again, where some black guys mess with me, He was very friendly with me. He did take me to a bus stop, an RTD bus stop. He said I'd get into San Juan and Fairfax. And I gave him $4 to thank him. If you want more money, he's kind of desperate. He's very kind, But I said I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. I was apologizing. I'm sorry. I can't do it anymore. I gotta go someplace. So I got to the RTD bus and the lady bus driver took me all the way to San Juan, Fairfax. I got there. I don't know the street outside. Probably San Juan or something like that. I walked there into a Hit Sweets, or I believe I was very normal. Rebecca Schaeffer's place on the south. So I got, and then when I arrived in the neighborhood where Rebecca Schaeffer's place was, and maybe saw places at 120. I knew I was on Street Street. I was wondering, I remember seeing a taxi cab. And the guy was coming out of the building, was waiting on his visa, and he was loading his luggage to the taxi. He's going to the train. I asked the guy, is that an apartment or is that a house? Because I'd never seen such an apartment. That was an apartment. I didn't see anything like that in Tucson. So I was wondering if it seems like an apartment. I was looking at the place, I was thinking, I kind of you look at the picture postcard of Rebecca, and it just didn't seem like I was expecting more of a glamorous place. It seemed very, I guess, mundane or very down to earth. And I was walking around the building, looking around at it. I think it's such a small place for our to live in, And I went there and I went to a diner. I guess it was on Beverly. And I went to a diner and I ordered onion rings and a cheesecake, because I hadn't been up all night, from the bus drive. I was just eating, I was kind of nervous. I couldn't eat too much, And after that eating, I left that diner and I went back to the neighborhood. And again, I looked at the place, thinking, push pop. Still dying, she could live in there, So I went around, I went to the alley, loaded up the 357 Magnum. I loaded it up, left one space empty. One space empty for safety in case it's like hammering again, so we go out shooting in the foot. My wife carried the gun, the white plastic bag.
Can you hear it? Yeah, I'd like to hear it better than I was able to.
And I went there and I went to a diner. I guess it was on Beverly. And I went to a diner and I ordered onion rings and a cheesecake, because I hadn't been up all night, from the bus drive. I was just eating, I was kind of nervous. I couldn't eat too much, And after that eating, I left that diner and I went back to the neighborhood. And again, I looked at the place, thinking, push pop. Still dying, she could live in there, So I went around, I went to the alley, loaded up the 357 Magnum. I loaded it up, left one space empty. One space empty for safety in case it's like hammering again, so we go out shooting in the foot. My wife carried the gun, the white plastic bag. And
Did you transcribe this particular segment about him loading the gun?
No, Your Honor. However, I believe I know what he is saying.
All right, let's have your idea of what he's saying.
I believe he's saying that he, after going to the diner, went into the alley and loaded the gun with 5 rounds, leaving one space, he says, empty. In other words, one chamber in the revolver cylinder, which he did for safety so that he would not shoot himself in the foot if the hammer were to be struck on the revolver.
That's what I thought I heard. Okay, continue.
I was carried in the bag. I just dropped in the bag, And as soon as I went to the alley, I believe that the alley was near where Rebecca lived, It wasn't the one where I took off later on. Okay, let's see, this is Rebecca Schaeffer's from the 29th Street. There's an alley here. There's an alley over here near the store, grocery store. That was the alley where I went in and loaded up the gun. So as I came on, I was looking out the area. I noticed there was a guy in a white car getting on parking tickets, traffic enforcement officers. There was always an area, and I was thinking that about to give up, and I was thinking, this ain't good. It's 68. I'm seeing them like 16 I feel it's anytime before, and it's just gonna be like Burger Studios ranch, And I've never seen this lady. She was wearing shorts long. I guess that's hiring 2 straps or whatever. I showed her the pull out the photo, I said, have you seen this girl? It goes to the postcard, right? And she mistakenly said later on in court that it was a classified, which it wasn't. And I showed it to her. I said, have you seen this girl? She looked at me and kind of arrogant, she just left and she didn't even say anything. Like that, So I said, wow, that's an arrogant person, So I put the postcard back in my bag, and I decided, maybe perhaps try to see Rebecca, at the apartment, see if she's there, And I just remember when my sister said about calling her, so I went to the phone and I said, I called her up, made a collect call, right? Okay, see, this is very early, it's getting close to, kind of down the sun, sort of getting close to shutting down, this, and I called her up and I told her I was in Illinois. She said, oh, Rob, you're in Illinois? She was very disappointed I was in Illinois. I told her I was a block away from Rebecca's apartment. I said that, I talked about the mission, I was saying about completing the mission, I was very uncertain about what lay ahead, She immediately jumped into us saying, no, we don't do it, American meaning, just don't do it. And come to Tennessee. We have a partnership for in our house. We'll help you. It's gonna get hard, at times, but just don't do it, Robert. Just don't do it because I don't know how America's gonna feel, And she did respond and said, yeah, I know it's gonna okay. So listen here, because I wasn't sure if I could do it, I mean, I get fantasize about violence, but then it's kind of different to actually do violence. I guess there's a thing called moment of truth where I and I didn't feel I had nerve yet, but I was talking to my sister, and she kind of taught me, it's kind of losing I guess a sense of nerve in case the charges I found trying to see her, Anyways, I said, I think I said something that I waited so long to want to see her, Paul says, I'd rather you not do it, but if you just don't do it, just don't hurt her or anything, because, that's somebody else's family, just don't do it, It's like girl belongs to somebody else's family, just don't do it, She said, but if it's, you have to meet her, just do it, but just don't do it, It's fine to meet her, just don't do it, That's what she said, And I left, I carried the phone. That was at the grocery store. There was 2 phone payments there. That was, I guess, the South Street, the apartment. And then so I thought it was okay to go to the apartment. So I went to the neighborhood space where we got to live. I went up to the door, the security door. It's just a glass door, a few bars in front. I look at the mailbox, there's an intercom in the corner. And it's a blue jacket, it said Schaeffer, mailbox thing, buzzer. So I rang the buzzer, I was expecting to speak to God, I was good if that's the order, and I go from my sister's saying, right? I'm right there, getting ready to talk, expecting her to talk to him, And then I look, and I see him down the hallway. It's her, she's wearing my glasses, She's looking sort of like a geek in a way, Her hair's all like that, She looked very casual. And I was like, no. The girl that I waited so long, and there she was, there were no questions. With her, with her, And she was wearing a short blue sleeve, shirt, light blue, She was wearing jeans and all, And when she came to the door, she opened the door and I said, yeah. What do you want? And I introduced myself, I'm Robert Bardo from Tucson, Arizona. I said, I'm a fan of hers, And me myself, I'm wearing jeans, I'm wearing a yellow shirt, I'm wearing a Marlboro t-shirt, And I had to play plus everything. Pull up the postcard. She takes the door, but she has the door. And as soon as she sees the door, she comes out with it more, And I kind of her, I asked her if she would never seen this. She says, yeah. I said, I'm sorry to bother you, I'm sorry to bother you. because she's looking at the portfolio with it, and she says, her right hand enters my front door, and she does all the more, will you nurse that? And she just looks at it real quick, she says, yeah, she came a little sweet to me, but I couldn't believe she was sincere enough to I know she was an actress model. Anyways, she starts to like, please take care of him. And I looked at her smile. She came out. She's almost all in. There's nobody else around. It's just me and her. It's very early morning, And I looked at her hand. I think it's her left hand. And she had turquoise jewelry, a bunch of jewelry. It's heavily jewelry. A lot of jewelry in her hand, I'm surprised her hand didn't.
No, I asked I motioned to Dr. Dees right now to stop the tape because I had a question I wanted direction towards this portion. Dr. Dees, as is evident in the tape, or at least appeared evident to me, at this juncture in the conversation, in the interview, Robert Bardo's facial expressions or attitude in discussing when he first met Rebecca Schaeffer seemed to change. Did you pick up on that?
Yes, I thought that his facial appearance brightened at this point, and he radiated the same kind of joy that we got a hint of before when he talked about the fun he'd had skating at Rockefeller Center. During most of he had skating at Rockefeller Center. During most of the time I spent with him, he was without that particular emotion of joy or happiness. And yet, when he talked about finally meeting Rebecca Schaeffer, he came alive, brightened, and changed his demeanor considerably.
Did that have some significance as far as your opinions that you reached?
Well, I believe that he has had conflicting emotions toward her for a considerable period of time, and that among the emotions that he had was that of affection, adoration, or something very positive. I took this as an indication, as a further indication of that, but he'd written about it, he'd spoken about it. There are many other indications that one of his sentiments toward her was positive affection. I also thought it was significant in that in his recounting of this to me, on that and on other occasions, he showed that same brightening that I think would be difficult for someone wishing to make this appearance, though it had not been true. In other words, despite his above average intelligence, I doubt that he would think to behave in that particular way if he were trying to feign that aspect of his emotions toward Rebecca Schaeffer.
Thank you. Go ahead and resume the tape.
Let me ask you a question here. As I watch it, I think at least that I get an impression of somebody with a considerably higher IQ than that which he's been tested at. As I recall, it was 111, which is just a hair above average, isn't it?
It's a bit above average, Your Honor.
Well, isn't the range of IQs that are considered average is somewhere between 90 and 110, giving due allowance for errors in the tests, etc.?
Yes, sir.
All right. So at 111, he would just be 1 point above the average range.
That's right.
Noticing his vocabulary, it seems to be higher than that to me. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I'm just asking you whether my impressions are correct or not.
I share your impression, Your Honor.
All right.
I think if it were not.
Well, I'm glad they caught him. And Judy said one of the victims was a Parkland shooting survivor. I told Travis, and he goes, that person must have 9 lives. Man, I don't get it. Like, how is a mass pew-pewing going to make you feel better. It's not. You're going to end up in jail when they catch you. Doesn't make any sense. Don't understand it. I don't know why that reminded me of this, but I forgot to tell y'all. Rob Reiner. You guys remember Rob Reiner? He was Meathead on All in the Family, and then he directed a bunch of movies, When Harry Met Sally, and a lot of movies, which I can't think of them all because I don't, like, I've seen probably movies that he directed and didn't realize he was a director. I can't think of any more right off the top of my head, but Rob Reiner, he has directed a lot of classic movies. He and his wife were found dead. Yeah. By their daughter. They were found dead in their house by their daughter, and it's a homicide. So, hopefully, they find out who did it and we get a trial. They said it was suicide. Everything I saw this morning, it said homicide. Okay, I'm going to have to do some more research. Why? Oh my God. Yeah. And I know I'm blanking right now, but I know he's directed a lot of movies that I love. I just can't think of names right now. I know When Harry Met Sally. I think that was the one that like put him on the map as a good director, but I cannot remember. Yeah, Meathead. No, you could be right, Nancy, because I didn't get a chance to read everything. I just read, like, I skimmed a couple articles this morning, and the first thing I saw was, found dead in homicide. A Few Good Men. Yeah, my mind just drew a blank. That's all I can remember right now is When Harry Met Sally. But yeah. Like, who? Yes! Stand By Me and Spinal Tap. Thank you, Nichelle. See, I knew it was like these like iconic movies, and just my mind drew a blank. But yeah, that's crazy. It makes me sad. I almost cried when I was like, oh my God. I was just staring at the article going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, that shocked me as much as Gene Hackman's death. I mean, although that wasn't homicide, but I'm of the age now. I mean, of course it was homicide, but I'm of the age now that all the people that, yes, Princess Bride, what is wrong with my brain? Debbie. I'm of the age now that all the people that I grew up watching their movies, either in it or direct or whatever, that they're old now and they're starting. He directed Misery? Oh my God. Now I really am in mourning. Oh, geez. Yeah, those are some of my favorite movies. Did he direct Spinal Tap 2? Because there's a new Spinal Tap coming out. Oh man, Michael McKean and Christopher Guest is going to be devastated. The movie is not as bad as the book because some of the awful things that happen in the book don't happen in the movie. Oh man. Why do people suck so hard? Ah! Why? Like, why would anyone kill him? I don't understand. I don't get it. Well, maybe we might have a trial to watch. I didn't catch where they lived. Did they live in California? Because if they lived in California, then we probably won't see a trial. But if they lived in another state, we might. if they catch the person, hopefully they'll catch the person. I don't know if that's a motive for murder. Oh, they did live in California. Oh, well. We can follow the case. We can follow the case as best we can. Unless they decide to televise it. I mean, live stream it, whatever. Which they might. Oh, no. So there's just somebody with a gun and you're rage running around somewhere. Coming back from Orlando last night, there's the prettiest, they were clouds, but they were like long strings of clouds in the sky. It was like, please be Jesus coming back. I'm ready to go home. That wasn't in a bad way. Like, I'm not going to do anything to myself. Don't misconstrue that statement. Like, when is it gonna stop? Like every generation thinks the end of the world is coming because it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, when does it stop? When does the world actually end? Because it just gets worse and worse and worse.
For his illness that he'd measure much higher.
Much higher? All right, thank you. All right, proceed.
Let me crank up the volume.
And our wrist, she had a metal wristband, and I think she was wearing blush, with no lipstick, and she's just being, smiling at me, please take care. I asked her to shake her hand, she like, come on, she shook my hand, and I said, what you showing this network, because also I've been doing it, looking at, so he did the time that, she's sort of this shaking her head, The thing that she was in a hurry, I couldn't understand it, I was like, so I was there, and I was like, it's like, there she is, I don't have to shoot and security guys get her, and she's right there in front of me, and I didn't even shoot her, the journalist in the back, I was still talking to her, she was just a regular person, There's no big security guards, she wasn't dressed up glamorously like some people. And I it's just like this, it's me and her, That's like what most guys who fantasize about seeing their favorite celebrity, And this was it, it's just me and her, talking to her, And so after I leave, she goes back inside, and I'm like all excited, and I'm, getting towards the Hollywood area, because I see that area the most, Hollywood area. And I'm heading there, I go there with me, and I'm walking, I remember hitting, I think it's CBS. I simply was walking in Beverly. I remember seeing a deer was laying, do the right thing in India, just like you said. I simply remember, I'm not sure if it was a bus or something, the culture of license to James Bond. I'm walking, and I'm thinking about, this is great, I can't wait to go home to write about this. And okay, I was like, this is great. She was a nice person after all, I'm totally happy.
Yeah, that was old though. They didn't televise Danny Masterson's trial.
And as soon as we went to it, I figured I could talk to her more, so I had one letter, it's a small letter, it's just I think a couple pages long, asking about it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to see her, because if she had become all those letters, I figured since I was there, I could ask her, just go back to her place and ask her, and give her that letter again. Plus, I want to use that letter as an excuse to bring her to the person to talk with her, so she'd come out just like before, and I could talk, Figured she had all day, and it started in the morning, I didn't know she was very good, so, I was kind of nervous on that idea, because she seemed like she's ready to get back before, because, was kind of walking back and forth thinking, I should do that, because I remember selling all the CDs, and I just wanted, for that purpose here, and I just figured I had to talk to her a little bit. So now let's go. You get right over there later on. I said, I'm still debating if I should do it, because I figured, hey, I'm in everybody. I just walk into the door, talk with my CM later. She comes to the door, and it's just seemed like, and she's seen me before, she trusted me before, So it's not like I've never heard her or anything, That's why I hadn't even thought about that. I even thought some stuff like that until I was about to happen. I'm still in a very good mood, I was kind of nervous. I remember there was this passing by consultant who was building this black building, had some Hebrew writing on it. I remember I decided to go I think I needed to get to rest or something like that. I went into the back to the diner that I went before this on Beverly. I went to the restroom and all kind of feeling myself taking a quick piss. I'm looking into my bed, I'm thinking, just go home, tell it, and I skip my car, get back to the hallway area and probably use it and take a bus there and go home. And I just figured I'd see more of LA, Figure Rebecca was the best of LA to me, and that's one of the things that's been so much trying to find, so I figured I'd go back there, I was constantly thinking, and I took out again, get prepared to go back to Hollywood, I put a bullet in it. I don't know if it was 110 green or the 154 green, because it's but I took the last chamber and I put it back in the gun, Now with the holster, I really never used it, I don't even understand why I took it, because I never used it, I can't play photo shots lying with a gun, but I always stripped the gun face downward, And I put the gun back where I was thinking if I did here, probably give her the Joshua Tree CD I had that would, because that was one of the things I listened to. I was give that to her, the very CD that I listened to the Dream Up Beat, give it to her, And I gave her several other things, while I'm talking to her, I still noticed it. But as I was leaving, it was all daytime, it's very early, and the sun was on, it was kind of hot, so I decided, hey, I'll get in somewhere where we're going to go, but I was still very nervous, what happens if she don't like me?
Yes, I hear that one.
Considerably from
Well, I'm glad Pete is having trouble.
I hadn't even thought about that. I even thought some stuff like that until I know it's about to happen. I'm still in a very good mood, That's
fine.
So now let's go. You get right over there later on. I said, I'm still debating if I should do it, because I figured, hey, I'm in everybody. I just walk into the door, talk with my CM later. She comes to the door, it just seemed like, and she's seen me before, she trusted me before, So it's not like I've never heard her or anything, That's why I hadn't even thought about that. I even thought some stuff like that until I know it was about to happen, I'm still in a very good mood, Hebrew writing on it. I decided to go to I think I needed to get to rest or something like that. I went into the back to the diner that I went before this on Beverly. I went to the restroom and all kind of feeling myself taking a quick piss. I'm looking into my bed, I'm thinking, just go tell it, and I skip my car, get back to the hallway area and probably use it, take a bus there and go home. And I just figured I'd see more of LA, Figure Rebecca was the best of LA to me, and that's one of the things that's been so much trying to find, so I figured I'd go back there, I was constantly thinking, I take out the gun, get prepared to go back to Hollywood, I put a bullet in I don't know if it was 110 green or the 154 green, 57. But I took the last chamber and I put it back in the gun, Now with the holster, I really never used it, I don't even understand why I took it because I never used it, I can't play photos flying with a gun, but I always straight the gun face forward, I put the gun down for it. I was thinking if I did here, probably give her the Joshua Tree CD. I that would, because that was one of the things I listened to. I was give that to her, the very CD that I listened to female beat, give it to her, And I gave her several other things, while I'm talking to her, I still noticed it, but as I was leaving, it was all daytime, it's very early, and the sun was up, it was kind of hot, so I decided, hey, I'll just get somewhere and go, but I was still very nervous, when
Can you say I see your get this over with?
I do have a transcript of this part. So I decided, hey, what the heck, I'll get this over real quickly and go, but I still was very nervous, What happens if she don't like me? What happens if she get pissed off at me? I couldn't know what to expect.
I'm gonna get this over with. Can we get to that part real quick?
I think it's get this over real quickly.
Okay.
The very CD that I listened to female beat, give it to her, and I gave her several other things, while I'm talking to her, I still noticed it, but as I was leaving, it was all daytime, it's very early, and the sun was up, it was kind of hot, so I decided, hey, I'll get this somewhere and go, but I was still very nervous, what happens if she don't like me, when she gets pissed off, I couldn't know what to expect, and what would happen if I did go there again, So I now one stop, I'm about to tell you what I told the LAPD, and I told the Tucson police, I admit that I wasn't this part, I was not telling the full truth, because I'm trying to protect my brother in from the responsibility by him, because like I said, it was my responsibility for doing what's about to happen. I'm about to tell you how, because it's not my father's fault for what happened, it is my fault, that it happened. The streets, training with the lights, and I saw streets, walk straight, I was in my yellow shirt. I went to the door, straight to the room, I rang the doorbell once, no answer. And I was driving. I just kept the door actually nothing. So I rang the doorbell again, twice on the second. This time she came out of it. And I looked at her, and then she went back for her. I mean, of all the times I'm thinking about meeting her, this was truly down to her. Her wearing a bathrobe. This was not like, this wasn't, I was kind of, I know something was wrong because, it was a wrong time because she was getting a shower. The drugs just don't want to be interrupted. Take showers to be prepared. I wasn't sure if she was getting prepared to go, but I knew she was taking a shower because the car was waiting to come back. She wasn't wearing any glasses. I think she was wearing a necklace here and and then as she came down the steps, she seemed to wave her hands like this. She mumbled something, it sounded like me just I can't really remember this part. I did see the letter, either come get your letter or me to bother me about. So just say, letters, I'm waiting for letters. So I wanted, and that's, I'm kind of feeling bad that I caught it at the wrong time, when she said that, I thought she's in a bad mood or something. I feel like I kind of hurt it because I didn't want her to think of me in a bad way, But really, that's something that's very important that I had an impression of this. I tried to do about it, but I was very nice, you know. When she came to the door, she opened it, you know. She opened it, you know. And I put the thing in the letter in her hand, and I saw it said Jack here, and I was looking at her and I pulled the thing, you know. And she you know, she said, "You're here." I said, I went into my phone in my bed, and during the time I was looking at her, she also skin on her forehead is kind of, you know, she's constantly looking down like this, you know. And her skin was like auburn, you know, it's kind of auburn, you know, instead of just big pale skin, you know, like her hair, you know. And she's just kind of looking, I guess, is wet, water dripping down her eyes and all. And I think I saw her wearing a necklace or something. You know, she seemed sort of calm, she seemed kind of, you know, that she'd been distracted or something. I thought, she it's not such, right? But she's, you know, the wrong time, you know, the guy was in bed like this, you know. And at the bottom of the things, you know, right above the girl, you know, and then this grocery bag is kind of like a chin, right? And they found the bottom of the you know. And she says, I think she, you know, I wasn't very, you know, I couldn't, you know, I wasn't focusing too much attention on her, but it seemed like she said, I mean, to come to my house, give me a litter, you know, again, you know, like she was like I was bothering her, and I thought, I was such an arrogant shape, you know, and I was a little embarrassed, you know, and then she says, she says, just, you know, she saw, she said, hurry up, she's wasting my time or something like that. She's moaning, she sounded like a little kid, you know. She sounded like a little, she has a kid, like a kid voice, like she sounded like a little brat or something. And, you know, she's wasting her time, you know, like you know, I mean, I thought that was very common to say to a fan, you know, so, you know, it's wrong, and pulled the door from her. Okay, I grabbed it, with this hand, I grabbed the door, gun still in the bag, really strong, grab it on the trigger. This, the bullet hit her here, blood squirted out, and she's just screaming. Screaming. Oh my God. And I was like, oh my God. I killed her, you know. And she's screaming, and she fell back. She's falling. This, you know, she's constantly doing it. She hit the ground. She's going, what? And I was looking at her. Oh my God, I killed someone. No, I did. Oh no. You know, because I couldn't pull back the action I just did, you know. And she was going, why? She's screaming. She's just straight screaming. She's going, why? You know. And I was like, oh my God, you know. Yeah. I thought that she said that thing that she should know, you know. And then I said, oh my God, no. And I kind of stepped in a little bit, you know, to the entryway, you know. I remember some steps there, you know. And you know, I was thinking, oh, I can't, now that I've done it, you know, I was following up the gun, being all nervous, and while you're trying to get, I was still on the bag, and I was still following, and I was thinking I should blow my head like this and fall on her, you know. And I was trying to get the nerve to do it and everything, and she, like, you know, she sees me doing this, following around doing this, you know, and her eyes are wide open, you know, and she's looking at me, you know, and she's still screaming, and she turns her head, you know, and she's really freaking out now, you know, because she sees me. She's wondering, it's like she doesn't understand, you know, why this happened. She didn't understand at all, you know. And I was feeling so bad about it, you know. And I said, I'm going to try to do it, you know. And they go on fire, you know. I thought Cersei, you know, was on the edge because she was screaming, you know, that I could do it, you know. And when she turned her head like towards the stairs, and the stairs, she was screaming, she was like as if she's calling for help. Help. I don't know, that, you know. And I left, and I just couldn't be around there anymore, you know. As I just moved away, you know, as I just left the place, I just go out and kind of kept thinking, you know, thinking if I could tell one of my neighbors that she was shot, you know, if I remember I had a gun and I couldn't how to explain it, and I thought I had blood on my shirt, you know. How am I supposed to explain myself, you know? So I decided it's best for me to leave, so I'm not really ready for that, you know. If I did, you know. I was expecting the LAPD SWAT team to jump in there, you know, ready to get me, you know. And I was I panicked when I hit the alley, you know. Here's what we want, right? And I headed north and hit the alley, and there's a dumpster with a bag and a gun on. I didn't tell the LAPD this was, I didn't, you know. This is something I wanted to tell them, but I did have a gun and a bag and threw it into a dumpster. I do remember that, you know. It's something I decided to tell them because I didn't want my brother to take responsibility for buying a gun for something I did, you know. And that's why I was taking off the shirt, you know, throwing things on the roof and everything, you know. And I constantly reaching. I remember as I was running down the hall, I got hit by a garbage truck that's coming down the yard, you know. And I remember constantly asking people to get me out of here, you know. And, you know, I remember one black guy, you know, he was doing here, and he was, I had his thing that he could get me out of the area. And he said, he had something else to do, and I couldn't do it. And so I kept running. I was expecting police to catch me anytime. I was expecting to hear sirens and all, you know. I was naive how police respond to such things, you know. After a while, after leaving, you know, Saturday was downtown river, you know, simply remember those audios that I had. I remember physical powers there, the LP, makes me think about turning myself in, so I wouldn't get stopped from the shoot, you know. I was constantly watching, thinking, police cars again, you know. And I was thinking about it, you know, but I was thinking about going home to talk to her about what I had done, you know, what I should do, you know, because I never did it. And then I had a thought, you know, this is something different. To attack someone with a gun was pretty serious, you know. I didn't know where to turn, you know. I was thinking about going home, you know. And I remember during that walk, I hit a gas station. I went to the bathroom, trying to lock myself up, and I'm supposed to be there, you know. And I was kind of dazed, you know, because something was very different, you know. It's just, this was real. This wasn't fast, this was real, you know. I was different, you know, because she was, you know, shot someone. It was different from more than panic after she was hit, you know. Eventually got downtown to the Greyhound bus station. You know, I didn't know where the LP's parts, I didn't know what the building was, so I decided to take the Greyhound bus home. And I was waiting as I got to the bus station. Once there's a lot of LP cops around there, you know, I thought they were looking for me, you know, but they didn't even know who I was. And it's still too early, you know. And when I arrived in the while walking from research to downtown there, I know there's a helicopter, and I thought they were looking for me. I thought they knew exactly what I was, you know. But after a while, there was no.
Seemed like, I believe it was his words, seemed like Rebecca Schaeffer. Is that significant psychiatrically?
Yes, it is.
And how so?
Well, I think the principal significance lies in the fact that he was so socially isolated and absorbed in this entertainment world that he was able to develop beliefs, expectations, thoughts of a deviant variety that were not checked against other people's perceptions and attitudes and beliefs. That is, it's because of his immersion in the entertainment world to the exclusion of any real social relations that he was able to sustain this autistic preoccupation with Rebecca Schaeffer.
I wanted to direct your attention, Doctor, if I could, to the testimony of, I believe it was Lynn and Marta. Did you review that portion of the preliminary hearing transcript?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any expertise or have you conducted any research into persons who have been subjected to a traumatic situation and the effect that that traumatic situation may have had on their recollection or reconstruction of events?
Yes.
Could you describe for the court what that research is?
Well, there's experience and research. My experience comes principally from having occasion to evaluate people who have been involved in events that led to someone's death, including a variety of criminal incidents, shootings of various kinds, in which I have the opportunity to examine and interview survivors, and also people who have themselves been victims of trauma that they have survived. I sometimes have occasion to evaluate them to determine the extent of their damages. With respect to research, I've done one survey study that concerned police officers involved in shooting incidents and whether they had any of particular set of psychological events occur to them in the course of or following those shooting incidents.
Now, based on that research, is there some phenomena that occurs or can occur in a person reconstructing the events as far as time sequence?
Of the various things that can occur, one that I've observed in my own experience, one that I found in that survey I mentioned, and one that's documented in the research literature, is a distortion in the perception of time.
Yeah, but Rebecca didn't do anything to him except, like, snub him. He got mugged. Rebecca didn't mug him. So how did PTSD or whatever come into play? That doesn't, I don't like that argument. I don't think that justifies what he did. That's a stupid question.
So that when they recollect the event or reconstruct it in their own mind, the time may not be as accurate as had originally occurred.
That's correct.
I want to direct your attention to your earlier testimony, where I believe you indicated that you had completed a study, I believe a 4 or 5 year study for the research arm of the Department of Justice. And I believe that research study involved the writing of inappropriate letters by mentally ill persons directed to public figures or entertainment figures. Correct?
It was eventually a 6-year study, and we found that most of the people writing inappropriate letters were mentally ill, though at the outset we weren't sure they would be. Otherwise, that's correct.
Were you able to identify certain factors, without naming the factors here, were you able to identify some consistent factors in these letters that you studied?
We were able to identify from letters factors that predict which letter writers will physically approach celebrities or other public figures.
Now, you had an opportunity to review numerous letters that were penned by Robert Bardo, written directly and addressed to Rebecca Schaeffer, correct?
Yes.
And to his sister Arlene.
Yes.
And also you read numerous letters that he penned at the age of 13 years of age to his counselors and teachers, correct?
Yes.
Directing your attention to the letters directed to Rebecca Schaeffer, did you find whether or not those letters, excuse me, are you able to tell us whether or not you were able to identify whether or not those factors existed in the letters of Robert Bardo and whether or not they were consistent with your earlier 6-year study and research.
Well, the relevant letters for that purpose were the ones that were actually received by Rebecca Schaeffer. And the letters received, or apparently received by Rebecca Schaeffer, in themselves showed enough of the characteristics that it was a certainty that he would approach her. However, that was already known to security at Warner Brothers because he already had approached her. And so they already knew that he was a high-risk subject on the basis of that.
You say they knew or they should have known, I take it.
Of course, yes.
You are familiar, Dr. Dietz, with the statements by Robert Bardo to members of the Tucson Police Department? Did you have a chance to review the transcript and the tape?
Yes, I did.
And I believe that that tape and the transcript referred to a interview with Robert Bardo on the day of his arrest in Tucson, Arizona, correct?
Correct.
And Your Honor, I believe we've already entered into stipulation that the court was to receive the transcript. That's my recollection. Is that the court's recollection?
Transcript
Of Robert Bardo's statement to the Tucson Police Department.
I don't think it was a transcript. I think it was a police report containing a rather lengthy statement.
That
I
was
think.
LAPD.
Oh, okay.
So there are two separate statements, one by LAPD, one by,
One to LAPD, one to Tucson.
Excuse me, Your Honor. There's a statement made to Tucson PD. I had a transcript given to me by the police department of Tucson PD. I meant to talk to
Well, I
counsel.
don't have that.
And there's
All I have is their report, which I'm holding
That's
in my
LAPD.
hand now. This is not LAPD, I don't think.
Yes, that's LAPD, the one you're holding.
Oh, okay. This is their statement that they took in Tucson, however.
Correct.
Okay, fine.
And there's a statement
That's
by,
not a transcript.
no, it's
Is
not.
there a transcript as well?
There's a transcript. There was one prepared by the police stenographer. It's not an official transcript. I had an official transcript made, and I was going to turn that into the court if it had not been done already.
Okay,
And I want to make sure with counsel that it would be, I think that the more appropriate thing to do is to turn in an official transcript by a certified stenographer. So that's why I had them all redone, and counsel
I
has
see.
copies of that.
all right.
in any event, I just wanted to reiterate that we did have an agreement that the transcript that was prepared of the Tucson statement was going to be introduced.
That's correct. It's the one that was done by the official stenographer, though. Is that okay?
Fine. Dr. Dietz, in any event, you reviewed that, did you not? Do you recall
Yes, I
that?
did.
In fact, you listened to the actual cassette tape of the statement, the interview, correct?
Yes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in that interview, there is a statement that is inconsistent with the information that was given to you by Robert Bardo concerning the events that transpired. What I'm referring to is a statement that he made indicating that it was an accident.
There is that, yes.
No, we're talking about the statement Tucson and St. LAPD.
Tucson.
Tucson, because that same statement is made to the LAPD. All right, go ahead.
I realize that, but I was directing his attention to,
No, I just need to clarify what we're talking about, especially since I haven't seen some of these documents.
is that psychiatrically significant to you, the fact that he made a statement, and we're taking out of context, of course, at this point, and the court will have an opportunity to review the entire transcript, but is it psychiatrically significant to you, the fact that he described the shooting in terms of an accident?
Well, he offered an explanation for why he had done that when he
Just a
said,
moment, doctor, answer the question. Is it
Yes.
psychiatrically significant? All right, go ahead, continue.
And what is the significance?
there are two forms of significance. The first is, he said to me that he had given that explanation to try to protect Ed from responsibility, which I took as a misguided effort to protect Ed, because I don't know that it really protects Ed substantially in any event, even if it were so. But there's another level on which I think it's an accurate insight of one way of looking at this, which is not to say that this is an accident in a legal sense. And that is that he is a man of fluctuating emotions and of fluctuating emotional valence toward Rebecca Schaeffer for some substantial period of time. What he will do with those emotional states depends very much on where he is at what moment, whether he's armed at that moment, and what emotional state he's in at that moment. It's much like a model that William Haddon once developed for understanding traffic collisions, that there can be fluctuations in roadway hazards and circumstance, and there are also fluctuations in drivers' attentiveness and judgment and performance. And collisions would happen all the time if either of those were enough. But they happen as rarely as they do, simply because it often takes the coincidental occurrence of both the roadway hazard and the driver's performance drop for the collision to occur. And here, I think it took the juxtaposition of opportunity, weapon, and that emotional peak that caused him to shoot her. And that had he not had that particular emotional swing at that particular moment, he might not have had another opportunity. So in that sense, which is not the legal sense, there was something of the accident about that juxtaposition.
The videotape portion.
Just a moment.
Oh, sorry.
I need to understand this. The question was whether there was any psychiatric significance to these, and you said yes, and then you said one possibility was his statement that he was trying to protect Ed. What is that a psychiatrically significant explanation?
Well, I've emphasized earlier that he's tried to protect Ed at various points, Your Honor. I think that's part of his character.
But does that have any psychiatric significance regarding his state of mind at the time of the shooting? The fact that he gave a statement possibly to the police stating it was an accident, possibly to protect Ed.
I think it just goes to his character, Your Honor.
All right. And what about this idea of the accidental juxtaposition of the opportunity and the emotional state and all that sort of thing? What is the psychiatric significance of that? I mean, I think what you're saying is that, in your opinion, all these things have to come together at the right time for it to happen. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Does it go beyond that, or is there any further, deeper psychiatric significance than that?
Just one particular point, Your Honor, which is that one could say something of that sort about any crime, that it requires the juxtaposition of certain key elements. Here, the psychiatrically relevant element is his emotional fluctuation.
You're right. I understand what he's saying. Go ahead.
And in any event, in the portion that we heard, the videotape that was played, there was a statement there by Robert Bardo addressing what he told the Tucson police about an accident. Do you recall that?
Yes.
In fact, he indicated, and I believe the statement, I'm paraphrasing, I'll allow the court to refer on the line its own notes, a statement that to the effect that, in a way, that's how I felt it was. It was an accident. Remember that statement by Robert Bardo?
No, I don't.
Okay. Doctor, in your opinion, I'm referring you now to the second visit by Robert Bardo to Rebecca Schaeffer's apartment. In your opinion, was Robert Bardo's mental state consistent with the theory that he was approaching with the mental state of catching Rebecca Schaeffer by surprise to effectuate some plan to harm her?
That's a possibility that can't be fully excluded, but I don't think that that's what occurred based on what I do know.
Your opinion is that it did not. That is not what occurred. I take it then.
I
Correct.
think you're asking questions to go to the ultimate legal issue now. I'll allow it in the absence of an objection. Go ahead.
Well, I think his opinion on the relevant issues were probably already addressed at the prior meeting. He'd always indicate mental state or something.
In the absence of an objection, I believe it's admissible, so we may answer.
I think he did.
Yeah.
I believe you're in it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you please read the answer again?
Question, Doctor. In your opinion, are you referring now to the second visit by Robert Bardo to Rebecca Schaeffer's apartment? In your opinion, what was, strike that, was Robert Bardo's mental state consistent with the theory that he was approaching with the mental state of catching Rebecca Schaeffer by surprise to effectuate some plan to harm her? Answer, that is a possibility that can't be fully excluded. But I don't think that that's what occurred based on what I do know. Question, your opinion is that that is not what occurred. I take it then. Answer, correct.
No, I didn't hear it correct. All right.
Doctor, I'd like to direct your attention now to the fifth stage or phase that I think we would call the post-Rebecca Schaeffer stage. Before we get into that area, were there any other factors or issues that you found psychiatrically significant during this Rebecca Schaeffer phase or stage?
Yes, there were.
Could you indicate what those are?
Well, first of all, I had asked Mr. Bardo about his experience of various emotions with respect to Rebecca Schaeffer. And the emotions that I asked him about were ones that we had studied in looking at letters to public figures, and they span a wide range. He endorsed nearly all of the emotional states that I asked him about, which included one that we had characterized as desperation, recklessness, and nothing left to lose. When I asked him that one, he replied exactly that was precisely how he has felt. When I asked him whether he had experienced any happiness, contentment, joy, or peace of mind toward her, he said that he'd experienced that. When I asked if he'd experienced condemnation, revenge-seeking, or punitiveness, he admitted that he had wanted to punish her. When I asked if he'd experienced suspiciousness and distrust, he said he had felt that way toward Rebecca, though he hadn't written to her about those feelings. When I asked if he'd felt love, adoration, and affection, he said he had. When I asked if he'd experienced jealousy and covetousness, he said he had. When I asked if he'd experienced hatred, aggression, and malice, he smiled and he named the song Welcome to the Jungle and sang the lyrics, quote, "You're one in a million, you're a shooting star," end quote. So he basically endorsed having felt a wide range of emotions toward her, both positive and negative. He had detailed for me other efforts to contact her that I think have probably been alluded to at some point in my testimony. I've never quite summarized them, but he went into further details about that, details about how he'd stored Rebecca Schaeffer memorabilia that he'd collected. I had, in the course of trying to evaluate Mr. Bardo, looked through all of the reports available to me from investigators of both the district attorney's office and the public defender's office. And there were portions of reports by laypersons and proximal witnesses that I thought contributed to my diagnosis of him, primarily through descriptions of him having an odd appearance or appearing disheveled or dirty, or of having no friends, or of being a loner. But there are multiple persons who've given those descriptions over the years, including some of the proximal witnesses on the day of the shooting who said that they thought he looked odd or strange or was behaving strangely. I think those are the principal relevant findings.
Along that same area of inquiry, that Rebecca Schaeffer stage, I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions about the significance of any to you of Robert Bardo asking people about the address of 120 Switzer when he presumably had the exact address of Rebecca Schaeffer. Is there anything significant in that line of conduct with you?
Well, he'd on earlier occasions shown this ambivalence of approaching and then avoiding. And so
That was his testimony, I'm sorry. I don't believe there was any testimony indicating defendant asked
People on the street whether she lived at 120 North Sweetser.
Questions were, have you seen her? Have you seen this lady around?
That's correct.
Is this an apartment or a house?
Let me rephrase that.
And it was the conversation to the man who had delivered the script. All right, go ahead.
Okay, directing your attention to those portions of the evidence which seem to indicate that Robert Bardo would show a photograph of Rebecca Schaeffer, the postcard presumably, to Ms. Tishkoff, the asking of the gentleman that I already referred to, who was entering a taxi cab, asking whether or not this was a house or an apartment, and reportedly referring to the 120 Switzer address. Statements of, I believe that there were some statements of asking other persons if they had seen this particular person, this lady. Is there any significance in that type of conduct when presumably Robert Bardo had the exact address of Rebecca Schaeffer?
I think I earlier testified that he told me he wasn't sure which of two addresses she lived in.
Which of two addresses?
Yes, Your Honor.
Which one besides 120 Switzer?
Sunset address that he.
Sunset Plaza?
I believe the testimony was that Zinkas had given two possible addresses, or that the DMV records had two addresses, 120 Switzer and a Sunset or Sunset Plaza address.
Was there also testimony with respect to the Sunset Plaza address that they had checked that out and found the man who said that there was a pretty girl living here but hadn't seen her in some time?
That's correct.
Well, all right.
And it was listed as a
Did he actually express doubt about which of those two addresses she lived in?
At some point he did.
Yeah.
I believe also, directing your attention to the videotape portion that we just observed, there was a statement made to you that apartment address of 120 Switzer did not look like an apartment house to him that he would be familiar with in Tucson, Arizona, or words to that effect. Is that consistent with what he had told you?
Yes, he told me that more than once.
Let me direct your attention to the fifth phase or stage of the post-Rebecca Schaeffer phase, if you will.
Inquire how much longer you have?
Let me defer to the doctor.
May I inquire what's the relevance of the fifth stage to the diagnosis? I mean, I'm interested, but I don't know where
See
to
what
put
it is. How much longer do you have in terms of direct testimony? We're nearing the end of the day.
Probably you should just,
May I request an offer of proof?
Well, maybe you will answer the question. How much
I don't
longer
know,
do
I'm
you
just
have?
gonna get into it and what areas that he found significant.
For the record, you did say that you would be, off the record, that you would be through today with your direct.
So I think I'd be done by 4:30.
All right, let's do it.
May I request an offer of proof as to the relevance of the fifth stage?
No, I will judge the relevance when the evidence comes in, and the weight, everything else about it. Go ahead.
Doctor, if you could indicate those areas that were psychiatrically significant to you in forming your opinion, if any, as to the post-Rebecca Schaeffer phase.
Well, I think there really is principally the issue of his response after fleeing. Based on all that I know from Mr. Bardo, from interviews done by others with proximal witnesses, and from the police reports around the time of his arrest, I think it would be a fair statement that he fled in a panic and made many people aware of his flight, called attention to himself as he did so, and that to me indicates some considerable emotional distress in the aftermath of the shooting, which I think is further evidenced by his running on the freeway off-ramp when he got off the bus in what may well have been a suicide attempt as he was running between cars.
One other thing. Is there any significance psychiatrically to the conduct of Robert Bardo in continuing to write letters to various people, to film critics, to newspaper reporters? Is there any psychiatric significance to his doing that, even in the light of his being advised by myself to not do that?
I think there is. He continues to be concerned about perceptions of these events and wishing it to be perceived correctly, continues to be angry at suggestions that Rebecca Schaeffer was anything other than perfect and innocent, continues to care more for the details of her career or of the lyrics of songs than he does for what he ought to regard as the legally relevant issues. And so he engages in what I would take to be self-damaging acts for the sake of making his point.
Is that consistent with your overall diagnosis and the opinions that you've rendered? That conduct that I referred to?
Yes.
I have nothing further on.
All right, we'll then take the, I didn't mean, my intent was not to rush it. If you have further questions,
No,
go
I
ahead.
believe that we've covered everything.
What I needed to know is whether we're going to finish with direct today or not, so that I can plan tomorrow. All right.
As far as I'm concerned, we finished with direct, but
If you hadn't finished, I would call us back at 10:30 and rush the calendar, because there are a number of heavy things on the calendar. Otherwise, we'd have you come back at 11. The calendar is heavy tomorrow, and there are some matters that require my attention that is more than perfunctory. Today was easy, tomorrow is going to be difficult. So 11 o'clock.
very well, Your Honor. Thank you. I wasn't intending to.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Before we begin, there would be a motion to exclude witnesses if I did not make one, such a motion prior to the trial commencing. I'd like to make one now.
You want to make a motion now to exclude what witness?
I believe Lynn Marta was in court. I don't know who. Miss Marta, a witness who testified previously.
Is she here? I don't see her. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I discussed this with counsel.
Is this a witness that you anticipate calling on rebuttal or not?
No, as a matter of fact, counsel informed me that he was considering asking the court to do a jury view, or doing a judge view of the crime scene and going to Ms. Marta's apartment. And I indicated that I was very much in favor of that, but I don't see that that is a reason to exclude her.
I would say not.
Okay, well, that would be our motion, of course.
Well, Ms. Clark assures me that Ms. Marta, who has been excused as a witness, is not going to be a witness on rebuttal. I don't think your motion is well taken. I'll allow her to stay.
All right.
At this point.
And I really wish counsel would inform the court when they want the court to leave the courtroom so that I can plan. I don't know if both of you are used to trying cases in long cause courts, but I have a calendar to handle every morning.
Your Honor, this morning, 2 minutes ago, was the first time counsel indicated he had that
All
desire.
right, let's proceed then. The motion is denied.
Doctor, you indicated in your direct testimony that you have worked on thousands of cases, correct?
I'm not sure just how I said it. I indicated that I'd stopped counting after 1,000,
Okay.
and that's probably the case.
And when you say worked on, you do not mean that you testified in over thousands of cases.
No, that number would be hundreds, I think.
And you have testified then, you would say, in hundreds of cases?
I think I've testified on hundreds of occasions about different cases. They have not all been on the same issues, of course.
Of course. And of those hundreds of cases, how many of them were testimony during the guilt phase of a criminal trial?
I don't have an accurate count, but I think the number would be somewhere between 50 and 100, perhaps 150.
Are you including in that number, Doctor, cases in which you testified in the insanity phase of a not guilty by reason of insanity plea?
Those would be cases in which I testified as a rebuttal witness for the government during the guilt phase where the defense was insanity. Yes.
Would you please exclude the cases in which you were called to testify in the sanity issue where a defendant pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and tell me exclusively how many cases?
We may be arguing semantics here. I don't think in many jurisdictions it's necessary to plead not guilty by reason of insanity in order to present an insanity defense.
Let me clarify that.
Sure.
When you testified in, for example, the Hinckley trial, you were testifying for the government, correct?
Yes.
And in their system of justice in Washington, when a defendant pleads not guilty by reason of insanity, is that issue litigated first or second after the guilt phase?
It is the guilt phase.
That is part of the guilt phase?
Yes.
Have you ever testified in a jurisdiction where there is a separation of phases between guilt and sanity?
Yes.
Would you please then tell me in how many cases you have testified in solely the guilt phase of a criminal case, where there was not an issue of insanity like this one?
I have no idea. I'm not even sure that I've always been aware what phase it was.
Well, Doctor, let me make my question clearer then. When you are called to testify by either side, you are made aware of whether or not a defendant has pled not guilty by reason of insanity, are you not?
Yes.
Can you tell me how many cases you have testified in where the defendant has not pled not guilty by reason of insanity?
And yet it was a criminal trial
Yes,
in the guilt phase.
correct.
I can't imagine it's been too many. I would estimate it might be half a dozen, 20, something of that sort.
Well, 6 to 20 is a pretty big range, Doctor. Can you pin it down just a little bit more?
Well, I can think of particular examples, but this isn't something I've ever tried to keep statistics on. And there's a range of issues this encompasses that I've been called to testify about.
Well, I understand you're going to be asked to address a range of issues, Doctor. All I'm asking is, in how many cases have you testified in a criminal trial where the defendant has not pled not guilty by reason of insanity?
I have no way to know. That's like asking an obstetrician how many redheads he's treated. It's just not what one keeps statistics on.
Yet, Doctor, you have kept statistics on how many cases you've worked on,
Up to a point I did, yes.
and you have kept a count of how many cases you've testified on.
No, I haven't. I've had to estimate that too.
Well, then, would you please give me an estimate of how many cases you've testified in the guilt phase of criminal trial where the defendant has not injected the issue of not guilty by reason of insanity?
I did. My estimate was between 6 and 20.
And when you say worked on, when you refer to working on cases, in some cases that means that maybe you just reviewed files?
What I was just referring to was testimony because I thought that's what I was
No,
asked.
I'm going to another issue now,
Okay.
Doctor. When you said worked on, you said you worked on, you stopped counting after 1,000 cases. Remember that?
Yes.
What do you mean by worked on? Does that sometimes include reviewing files?
At that time, that is when I stopped counting, it included those in which I'd personally done the examination and written a report, and those in which I'd supervised a member of my staff doing that
Which meant that you'd read his report.
and discuss the case, occasionally see the defendant, sometimes review the whole file.
Okay, so when you say worked on, that includes everything from having done the interview yourself and preparing a report to simply reviewing a report done by someone who worked for you.
That's right.
Now, what do you usually bill on an hourly rate for your work when you testify in court?
That depends on whose behalf I'm doing it. That is, I have separate rates for private work paid for with public funds, and, well, those are really the only two circumstances in which I would testify.
In the Hinckley case, you testified for the government, is that correct?
Pardon me?
In the Hinckley case, you testified for the government?
Yes,
And so that was your government rate?
yes.
And what was your hourly rate?
At that time?
Yes.
At that time in 1982, I think my rate was 120 an hour.
120 an hour?
That's my recollection.
What did you bill this court for your work?
I haven't. All I understand is that fee of $6,000 has been approved.
And what would that amount to in hourly discussions, assuming you finish your testimony today?
As of yesterday, I had totaled 105.8 hours.
That sounds like it comes to considerably less than 120 an hour, doesn't it?
If that's all I'm paid, it will be, yes.
And might that reduced fee have something to do with the publicity generated by this case, Dr. Dietz?
Well, I'm hoping I'll be paid for more of my time than was originally authorized, but that will be up to the court.
And might your reduced fee, if you do accept only what has been granted you at this point,
There is no reduced fee. That misstates, I believe, Dr. Dietz's testimony. He is hoping to get reimbursed by this court for all of the hours. He is not going to be billing a reduced fee.
I would like counsel both to approach, because I'm hearing things that are completely different from the discussions we've had. Perhaps you would like to approach ex parte.
Let's put this on the record.
Doctor, you indicated you spent how many hours so far on this case?
105.8.
That includes your testimony so far?
Yes.
And if you receive no more than what has already been granted you by the court, then you will have indeed accepted a reduced fee, isn't that correct?
I will have gotten far less than I usually get. That would be correct.
And from the start, when you picked up this case, you were aware that you would only be granted the sum certain of $5,000, is that correct?
I thought it was 6.
$6,000. Okay.
That's all
Is
I
that
knew
correct?
for sure that I would get. That's right.
So every minute that you spent above and beyond the hourly rate that you've indicated that would go over 6,000, you knew there was a strong possibility you would never be paid.
I didn't know what the odds were, but I knew it was possible.
And yet you agreed to accept the appointment.
That's right.
And you spent considerable more time than you had probably earlier anticipated, did you not?
Yes.
And does your willingness to accept the possibility that you may get nothing more than $6,000 in this case, which you've acknowledged is considerably less than you had ordinarily gotten, due in part to the fact that this case has generated quite a lot of publicity?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, if anything, that ought to be worth a bonus because it's more stressful and it's more problematic. I've never seen anything good come out of this sort of publicity, and I often succeed in avoiding publicity.
Is that so? You don't think that perhaps you might be getting more referrals or more appointments as a result of the publicity in this case?
Absolutely not. I've kept track of my referral sources, and the amount that comes from any kind of publicity and from things of this sort is minimal.
Doctor, you testified here in the course of giving your credentials to a number of high publicity cases that you have been involved in various ways in. And you have indicated that you lecture on the subject of celebrity stalkers, and you write papers on the subject matter. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And to the extent that you get involved in high publicity cases as a witness, that is yet another credit that you can add to your line of credits to get more appointments, to make more speeches, and write more papers. Isn't that correct?
I don't think it's really correct, and not all of those are desirable either. You know, there's no reward for writing the papers. These are all done for the good of the profession, and there's no reward for making speeches. They take far more time than the return on it. I see this as public service, just as I see writing the papers and speeches.
Yet you include all these things on your curriculum vitae, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And you testify to them as part of your credentials, do you not?
I certainly do.
So it does you some good too, doesn't it, Doctor?
I think, yes, it does me good to be someone who tries to contribute to the field and to the public, sure.
Tell me, of the 105.8 hours, how many of them did you spend with the defendant?
I don't have a way to break that down exactly, but there were 2 days that I went to examine him. And not all of those 2 days were spent with him because some of it was spent traveling. And several hours were spent waiting for him to be brought down each day. And then there was time spent talking to Mr. Galindo and getting home. The best way to look at how many hours I spent with him would really be from how long was videotaped the second day and from the times I noted on my notes the first day. I don't know offhand what they were. On the first day I arrived at 5 minutes of 10, took 40 minutes to get into the interviewing room, and another 27 until he was brought in. I then interviewed him from 11:02 in the morning until 5:15 p.m. There were no breaks except for a 5-minute restroom break. They didn't bring him lunch. And so that would have been 6 hours and 13 minutes. And then on day 2, I arrived at 8:15. They brought him and made him available to be interviewed at 10:30. And I don't think I recorded what time we stopped, but I believe it was approximately 4 hours that I was actually with him because I think that's about the duration of the videotapes. Perhaps it was less than that.
All right. And to be fair, 10 hours of time was spent with the defendant. Is that correct?
I think that's about right.
Now, at the end of the second tape, I noticed that you solicited the defendant's advice and viewpoints on various measures that could be taken to prevent future harm to celebrities.
Yes,
And you also solicited his cooperation in making future videotapes of him for your seminars.
I may well have.
And how much time did you spend doing that?
Seeking his advice on things?
Seeking his advice and soliciting his cooperation for future seminars.
I don't know, but I did spend some time on that.
Tell me, Doctor, do you have any plans at the present time to include this case and your involvement in it in a book,
I imagine I will.
in a seminar?
I suppose if I continue to do any,
And in future lectures and papers?
if I continue to do that,
Do you have an agreement with this defendant concerning the distribution of royalties?
no.
And if you do not receive any personal benefit, or you feel that you are involved in these celebrity cases for the good of the profession, then why do you take specific care to mention them in the course of discussing your credentials on the witness stand?
Because I think it's relevant to the fact that this is an area that I've specialized in, an area where I've devoted a substantial part of my career.
So you feel that indeed telling us about the prior high publicity cases you've been involved in adds to your credibility?
Yes,
When did you first come into contact?
I just can't with this man's eyebrows and his forehead. He looks surprised all the time.
With Mr. Galindo?
a very long time before I was appointed. I don't think I have that date with me. But I believe it was about a year before I was appointed that I first heard from him or his office. I'm afraid I don't have the date.
And when were you appointed?
Sometime in September of this year,
How long before your interview with the defendant were you appointed?
a week or two.
And you spoke to the defendant on September 23rd and 24th of this year?
That's right.
And how did you first come into contact with Mr. Galindo?
Well, first I received a telephone call from the public defender's office seeking an expert on obsessive compulsive disorder. And they would not identify what the case was. And I thought that might perhaps be this case because it wasn't long after he had been brought back to California. But I didn't receive any further contact. And my first actual contact with Mr. Galindo was a telephone call made by him about a year ago.
The person from the public defender's office who called you 2 years ago, was that a psychiatrist?
No,
Was it a lawyer?
I had the impression it was a paralegal. It was a woman, and she did not identify herself as a lawyer.
When you first spoke to Mr. Galindo, did he tell you anything about this defendant?
He identified what defendant he was referring to.
Yes, and what did he tell you about him?
He told me that he was charged with killing Rebecca Schaeffer and that he had letters that had been written to Rebecca Schaeffer and others, and that the defendant was held in Los Angeles.
When did you have... Strike that. You spoke to Mr. Galindo initially then on the phone, is that correct?
Yes,
And after that initial conversation, which occurred approximately a year ago, roughly, In that initial conversation that occurred about a year ago, how long was that?
How long a
How long a
conversation?
conversation was it?
Just a few minutes.
And after that conversation, when did you next meet with Mr. Galindo or speak to him on the phone?
I had heard nothing, I believe, at all until September of 1991, though it's possible he had called in the interim to say he'd requested my appointment. I don't have a recollection of any contact in between.
When did you first have a face-to-face interview with Mr. Galindo?
September 16, 1991.
And prior to that time, did you have any phone conversations with him? Other than the first initial few-minute one you mentioned?
None that I recollect.
How long was that interview on September 16th?
Oh, excuse me, there was at least one conversation in which we scheduled the September 16th meeting. So I know he must have called me just before that.
And that was likewise just a few minutes?
Yes.
And did not involve discussion of the details of the case?
No, and I can only even recollect one part of the conversation. I'm sure he didn't tell me much.
How long was the interview you had with Mr. Galindo on September 16th?
1.8 hours.
When was your next interview with him?
I next spoke to him for 12 minutes on September 19th.
On the phone?
Yes.
And when was your next contact?
I believe on September 23rd, after I examined Mr. Bardo at the jail, yes, I did. I had a meeting with Mr. Galindo for 24 minutes.
When was your next meeting?
September 24th for an hour.
Before or after your meeting with the defendant?
After.
And when was your next meeting?
On October 2nd, a 12-minute telephone conversation.
And your next?
October 3rd. And that was a very long meeting during which we reviewed the videotapes of the examination. I did the telephone interview of Mr. and Mrs. Bardo. I did some record review while Mr. Galindo did other things, but he basically spent the whole day
How many hours?
with me. He was down there for 11.5 hours.
Next?
October 4th. On that occasion, we spoke and reviewed videotapes for an hour and a half.
And after that?
On October 6th, we again met and reviewed videotapes for a total of 6.6 hours.
Is that it?
Then there were discussions on the way down from his office to court and at recesses or lunch breaks since I've been testifying,
Including this morning, is that right?
including this morning.
Now, when you first met with Mr. Galindo on September 16th, 1991, did he articulate to you his theory of the defense?
No.
Did he indicate to you which areas he wanted you to explore?
Yes.
And what did he point out that he wanted you to explore?
He told me that he wanted to direct my attention to the behavioral features of the case that surrounded the legal issues of premeditation, deliberation, lying in wait. I think that was all. I asked him if it was acceptable to also consider questions of intent and of insanity, and he said that was fine, but what he wanted me to do was the ones he'd first enumerated.
So you also explored the possible plea of not guilty by reason of insanity in this case.
To some extent, I did, yes.
And I take it that as a result of your interviews and your examinations and your review of materials, you concluded that that would not be advisable in this case.
That's right.
Now, who other than the defendant did you interview personally, sir?
Face to face, no one.
Who did you speak to on the phone?
Just his mother and father.
And that was what you referred to as basically a 10-minute discussion?
No, it was an hour.
How long with each one of them?
That would be hard to say because they kept interrupting each other, grabbing the phone back and forth. So I lost track of the time.
I take it then that you did not ever speak to Dr. Mayer of Palo Verde Hospital,
That's correct.
nor did you ever speak to Dr. Mall of Tucson Psychiatric Institute,
That's right.
nor did you ever speak to Dr. Stahlberg.
That's right.
Doctor, can you tell me at this point where you were on July 18th, 1989?
Yes.
Where were you?
I believe I was in Paris.
So you were not with this defendant on that day, were you?
That's right.
And you were not a witness to this murder, were you?
No.
And in fact, you never even heard the name Robert Bardo until at best July 19th of 1989. Isn't that correct? If then.
I think that's correct.
Then when you testified for us in conclusory terms concerning about what happened that morning, you were not in fact testifying from your personal knowledge, were you?
That's correct.
In fact, you were testifying to what you'd read in reports and transcripts, and most importantly, the defendant told you. Isn't that correct?
All of those, that's right.
And out of all those sources, the only one that you interviewed personally, face-to-face, was the defendant.
Correct.
Then in truth, although you didn't say so at the time, sir, that entire rather lengthy statement you made about the events that transpired on July 18th, 1989, were just your theories and interpretations of how you view the evidence. Isn't that correct?
Well, some were restatements of what the evidence is not disputed to show, and others were just as you characterized them, my interpretations and theories.
All right, I think you testified on the first day of your testimony, sir, that you had checked but found no evidence to support the possibility that the defendant had been malingering back in 1984 and 85. Correct?
Yes.
You did not call Dr. Mayer of Palo Verde Hospital, though, to check your observations or your conclusions with him, did you?
No, I didn't.
Don't you think that his observations of the defendant or his opinion of the defendant's behavior at that time, since he actually saw him, might have been an important source for you to consider?
No.
And of course, you never called Dr. Mall of Tucson Psychiatric Institute to check your conclusions concerning the lack of malingering at that time either.
That's right.
And you've also testified that concerning that 1984 report, you said the doctor indicated that the defendant reported having had auditory hallucinations all his life.
Yes.
I want to show you that report again, doctor. Mine's a copy. I'd like you to read this again and back up just one line. See what I have yellowed?
Yes.
Have you read it?
Yes.
So, doctor, it says he had obsessive thoughts about hurting people. At times, he was having some auditory hallucinations with the obsessive thinking. The patient stated he had had this problem all his life, and he blames his mother because she doesn't care or pay attention to him. That's what it says, correct?
Yes.
Don't you think, doctor, it's just a little unclear exactly what is meant by this problem that he's had all his life? It could be obsessive thinking of hurting others, or it could be auditory hallucinations.
Yes, that's right.
And you did not interview Dr. Mayer to try and clear up that ambiguity, did you?
No, I believe it was Dr. Mayer who was interviewed by one of the investigators and who didn't seem to really have much independent recollection. So I didn't think that would be very useful.
So you relied upon the representation of a non-professional public defender's investigator for your determination that would be unfruitful.
Excuse me, I object. There's no testimony that it was a public defender investigator report or a district attorney investigator report, because this doctor testified he relied on both. So that misstates the evidence.
What you're asking.
Do you recall which investigator it was whose report you relied on? I don't really think it matters.
No, but I can find it.
It matters for ruling on your question, though. Your half question.
Half question.
That was a senior investigator for the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, Dwayne Mueller Sr.
And what does it indicate concerning Dr. Mayer's response to him?
All I have at hand are my notes from the interview somewhere
Why don't you read that
else.
aloud, sir?
What this says is Dr. Mayer later reported that he wanted to continue working with Robert, but that his mother insisted that her son was not mentally ill and she would not consent to any further help for her son. Although his father was more cooperative, he did not think Robert was mentally ill either.
Doctor, are you of the opinion that that came from the DA's investigator?
No, I'm of the opinion that this came from Dr. Mayer's refreshing his recollection with the psychiatric records, and that I got that particular passage from the DA's office investigator.
In fact, isn't that just what is contained in the doctor's report here?
Yes, that's why I figured he didn't know any more than he had in his report.
Are you familiar with the rules of privilege, doctor?
In some places, yes.
Well, you stated before, I think, that you have lectured to criminal law classes, have you not?
Yes, I have.
It is incumbent upon you as a psychiatrist, especially in the forensic arena, to be somewhat familiar with the rules of privilege, is it not?
Yes, but I can't quote you them for every jurisdiction.
I agree with you, doctor, but don't you think there might be a problem with a prosecution investigator who goes to talk to a psychiatrist who previously treated the defendant? Perhaps the psychiatrist might have a problem on grounds of privilege about talking about that client?
I don't see any problem with the investigator going. I do see a problem with the psychiatrist answering the questions.
So when you considered the fruitfulness of talking to the doctor yourself, did you take into account the fact that at that time the doctor was talking to a prosecutor's investigator?
No, I didn't.
So he might not have wanted to be so very forthcoming with a prosecutor's investigator in light of the rules of privilege. Isn't that correct?
Speculation as to the state of mind of that particular doctor.
Question of meaning whether he considered that the doctor would be forthcoming with, in that sense, not, do you have an answer?
I did not consider that.
If your view of that statement, which is that he had the auditory hallucinations all his life, is correct, doctor, then weren't you a little surprised that he failed to diagnose any form of psychosis in this defendant in his provisional diagnosis?
Well, I knew he hadn't had auditory hallucinations all his life. I mean, I knew that that was not a correct statement because that's not true of anyone. What I thought it said was that he had claimed to have auditory hallucinations all his life.
Yet when you testified, doctor, you made it clear that you understood the defendant to have reported auditory hallucinations all his life, but you did not in your testimony clarify that you did not believe them to have occurred all his life.
That's correct.
So when you testified, sir, you were asked by the court on page 50. Will you show you this transcript?
Exactly.
So you testified, the court,
I'm sorry, doctor, we read that
yeah,
section that's being relied on.
yeah. The court asked you, when you said that he always had this problem, what were you referring to? Your answer, the hallucinations. The court, the auditory hallucinations? Your answer, yes. That's what he said to staff, or rather, that's what Dr. Mayer recorded he had said at that time. The court, he said he'd always had them and he blamed his mother. The witness, you, yes. I don't see anywhere in that statement, doctor, that you qualified it and said, well, I don't believe that he had them all his life. I just believe that's what he reported.
All I said was that's what he reported.
You did not qualify it by saying you didn't believe it, though, did you?
No, I mean, the only issue was whether he'd had auditory hallucinations at all. To me, that was the issue.
And yet you interpreted it for the court as being auditory hallucinations that he reported having all his life, without qualification.
That is what he reported.
Well, doctor,
According
perhaps,
to that report.
but you've just agreed with me, doctor, that there is some ambiguity in the manner in which that statement is phrased, isn't there?
Yes.
And that he might be referring to the obsessive thoughts of hurting other people as well. Isn't that correct?
That might be what he had all his life. That's correct.
And then when you look at the provisional diagnosis of obsessive compulsive neurosis, that might lead you to further conclude that what he referred to in that statement was not auditory hallucinations, but obsessive thoughts of hurting other people. Isn't that correct?
Those are both consistent, and the diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder is not consistent with the presence of auditory hallucinations.
Now, there may be a reason for that too, doctor.
Yes, the
Let me
that's
ask
that he
you-
didn't
let me
finish
ask
the
you-
evaluation.
Let me ask you something about that. The final diagnosis of Dr. Mayer is depressive dysthymic disorder. Isn't that correct?
That's my recollection. I also thought he mentioned obsessive compulsive.
As an axis 2. Now, let me ask you this, doctor. If, in fact, the defendant,
Could the witness have an opportunity to review those notes on that last question? I believe that's what he's doing now.
I'll just show him a copy of the report.
Is that what you want to say, Doctor?
Yes, I want to find the hospital
All
record.
right, why don't you refer to her copy unless it's not accurate or something?
Thanks. Yes, I see that my recollection was incorrect, that it was obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is something quite apart from obsessive compulsive disorder. And that in fact, the final diagnosis is of a condition that doesn't have obsessions or compulsions.
depressive dysthymic disorder. The
And
final diagnosis, is it not?
no, there are three final diagnoses. Depressive dysthymic disorder, which has neither obsessions nor compulsions. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which despite its name has neither obsessions nor compulsions. And post-cardiac surgery for septal defect, which has post-cardiac surgery for septal, S-E-P-T-A-L, defect, a hole in the heart, which has no obsessions or compulsions.
Is that any kind of a does that diagnosis have any psychiatric significance, the septal defect,
Only that,
post-operative?
only that he'd had open heart surgery as a child, the experience of hospitalization. It's given, Your Honor, on Axis 3 for medical conditions.
No, right.
Now, if a patient reported to you that he'd had auditory hallucinations all his life, does that final diagnosis sound like something that you would come up with?
It's hard to say what one would come up with when a patient's taken out of the hospital against medical advice before the evaluation's completed.
Well,
One
nevertheless,
might often revert to something more like the provisional diagnosis because one didn't have a chance to finish.
yes, well, but doctor, this person had 7 days with Mr. Bardo, didn't he?
No, he probably had a few hours over the course of 7 days.
Well, you don't know that, do you? Because you didn't talk to him, did you?
No, but I know what hospital procedures are like, and I can assure you he didn't spend 7 days with Mr. Bardo.
Can you really, doctor? But you haven't spoken to him. You can't assure me of anything this witness did, can you? Can you?
I am absolutely positive he did not spend 7 days with Mr. Bardo.
He
But
may
I
have
wasn't
spent a
there.
great deal more than 10 hours, though, might he not?
It's possible.
Now, if somebody reports to you having had auditory hallucinations all his life, would you expect to come up with a diagnosis of depressive dysthymic disorder? Is that what you would expect to be the most likely diagnosis?
No.
So in fact, coming up with what you have termed previously to be simply a sad mood disorder for axis 1 might be explained by the fact that the doctor did not attach a great deal of weight to the witness's report of auditory hallucinations. Might have not.
Could be.
And there are some concluding remarks here that you did not read earlier, which I'd like you to consider now.
Namely the yellowed portions.
Yes.
I don't know why he couldn't just say, no, I didn't believe him. But he wouldn't. How hard was that? No. Yeah, that's what he reported. No, I didn't believe him. Because he's paid by the defense. And so he's going to try to make the defense look better. And it's obvious. But thank God it's not a jury trial. The judge can see right through that. Hopefully a smart jury would too, because I did. I'm sure you guys did. A minute ago, I saw movement in the courtroom, but I wasn't caught up to the live as usual. So that was the whoa, 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 because I thought the verdict was in. It wasn't. I did it, young lady. Over it. Look,
Yes.
what that?
For the record, I'm going to read it out loud, Your Honor. Speech is clear with good vocabulary. Intellectual ability appears to be above average. He is oriented and appears to have
He might be in Long Crime Shack, because that's where Nancy and Ken are.
intact memory. His thinking is orderly, but rapid and pressured, with obsessive quality. His mood is one of high anxiety and depression. There is no delusional thinking. He appeared to be capable of considerable insight and appeared to have good motivation to understand himself better. His acting out behavior appears to be related to the intensity of his distress. Doctor, do not those concluding remarks seem to support a diagnosis of depressive dysthymia?
They're consistent with any of a wide variety of diagnoses. At that age, usually those who are going to show a full-blown schizophrenic illness haven't shown anything else than social isolation and discomfort.
But that's only one of many possibilities that might develop from a youngster with these kind of symptoms. Isn't that correct, doctor?
With what's in that paragraph, that's correct.
And as a matter of fact, a youngster with these symptoms might not wind up psychotic at all. Isn't that also a possibility, doctor?
Yes.
Now, you said you've read the defendant's letters that he wrote to Mr. Hickman in school, correct?
Yes.
Did you happen to notice then that there was no mention in those letters of voices other than once, and that occurred 2 days after he was released from the hospital at Palo Verde?
I don't know just where or how often that was mentioned, but that may be. I don't have any contrary recollection.
Being that you have no contrary recollection, then, doctor, wouldn't you agree? We can agree perhaps there was one mention, and that was made 2 days after he was released from the hospital the first time.
I don't know. I'd have to go back through the letters to see.
Well, doctor, wasn't it somewhat important to you to see whether or not he was reporting auditory hallucinations at a time when he had just been released from the hospital?
Well, it was important to me whether he had them or not.
Was it not important to you to determine whether or not his report of them was truthful or not?
Yes, it is important to determine whether he ever truly experienced them.
And in trying to determine whether or not those reports were truthful, doctor, wouldn't it be important to review the records that he writes?
I talked to her yesterday for a few minutes, but I forgot to ask her how she was feeling. I guess she's okay. She didn't say anything about not feeling well or anything. But I think with her dad being sick and all, and it being the holidays, and this is probably like going to be his last Christmas, I think it's making like her physical problems worse just from all the stress and everything. And I think that's just why she hasn't been around. And when she gets depressed, you know, like a lot of people will keep going when bad stuff is going on to like block it out. Like people, you know, people that like they need to keep working, you know, when something bad is going on. Other people, like, they isolate themselves, and that's kind of what she's doing right now. But she misses you guys. That's why she pops in for a few minutes every once in a while, because she misses us. But she's just having a really hard time because there was good news, and then now there's not. It's the opposite of good news. They thought they could get it, and now I think they don't think he's going to make it. So she's going through some stuff. Yeah. Some people do. I don't. I just, well, you guys saw me when I got depressed earlier in the month because of, you know, Travis being sick and the dogs being sick and all, you know, all the money going to doctor bills. I cry all the time and just shut down and don't want to. But I did it for you guys. If it hadn't been for y'all, I would have been in the bed curled up in the fetal position with the covers over my head. Because that's what I usually do too. I isolate when I'm depressed. But yeah, she'll be back. Just have to give her time. So, and no, Nancy, I am not mad at you. I will never get mad at any of you if you'd rather watch another channel while I'm live. It's fine. But I was just teasing you, Nancy. And you know, like Judy does. She has 2 screens. She's got me up while she's doing other things. She's watching other channels and researching stuff for me and finding headlines and I give you constant attention, Wiggles.
Letters that he wrote to Don Hickman to see if there was some further evidence to corroborate your view?
Yes, and in fact, I recall finding evidence there that did, and perhaps it's just what you're referring to.
Did you find it at all significant that the only mention of voices was 2 days after he was released from Palo Verde Hospital, although there had been letters written prior to his admission to that hospital?
Again, I can't confirm now that that's the case. I simply don't know the timing of that. But if that's so, then I understand the import of the question, and that's an important observation.
We're going to break for the noon hour, Doctor. I would ask that you review the school letters and determine whether or not my representation to you concerning the letters about voices is true or not. Can you do that, please?
Certainly.
All right, before we take any break, it is noon. Is there going to be a motion that I go to the scene or not? Or has that been decided yet?
I've mentioned there the possibility of doing that, but I had not made a confirming decision what I would do.
When you do, I would like an offer of proof as to exactly why I'm going to be there if I go, and what is going to happen when we're there.
Of course.
It occurred to me that possibly you were going to call Ms. Marta. Is that correct? You didn't say it, but...
No, I think her
I'm going
testimony.
to have her explain things at the scene if we go out there.
That would be fine.
Well, I don't think. She made a motion to exclude her, and I was wondering if she should be.
I made a motion to exclude her because of my assessment of her as a witness and of her credibility and of her, what I regard as her non-impartiality. And if we start getting into those areas and she's listening, I felt that it would impact possibly on any on her being called again as witness by the DA.
Oh, but she said she won't call it.
Okay, but that was, she made that statement after I made my motion to exclude.
Right.
So I had no way of knowing that was going to be the DA's answer.
At any rate, when do you intend, as you know, if you're going to make it and if the motion is granted, and I have to hear your offer of proof as to what you intend to do out there, it takes a lot of logistics to get out there. We need a court reporter, we need a clerk.
I can have an answer for the court after the.
All right, good. All right, we'll be in recess till 1:30. After lunch, you might want to.
Yes, I decided not to.
All right, so not the request to visit the scene. Okay, you may proceed, Ms. Clark.
So, Doctor, when we left off before the lunch break, I had asked you to look at the school letters to review how many mentions of voices in his head telling him to kill you were able to find, and if so, when the mention was made. And this was with regard to the diagnosis of Dr. Mayer back in 1984. Did you have an opportunity to do that, sir?
Actually, I thought you'd ask me to look for references to voices prior to the hospitalization. I didn't recall it was about voices commanding him to kill.
Well, why don't you tell me what you found?
I found 3 instances prior to the hospitalization, among all the other signs and symptoms of mental illness, that seem to be related to the experience of hallucinations. The first was on January 26, 1984, more than 2 weeks prior to admission to Palo Verde Hospital, when he wrote, quote, "Right now, I feel I'm writing to God."
No, wait, excuse me, doctor. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I asked you to check out voices in, excuse me, but
He may be getting to that. I haven't memorized the letters. Let's let him answer.
this is not responsive to my question, Your Honor. I'm
It may be he hasn't finished the answer. If it isn't, then we'll deal with it at such time as it is not. You may answer, sir. Finish what you were saying.
The quotation is, "Right now, I feel I'm writing to God. It seems like I'm angry all sudden. When I write to myself and feel like I'm talking to God. As evil as I am, I feel like I'm talking to the devil." End quote. Since that is the same content that he later in hospital records reports as hallucinating, I think when he says that he feels he's talking to God or feels that he's talking to the devil, he's describing the same subjective experience. Whether that experience is aptly characterized as hallucinations or in whatever terms, I think that's the same experience. Likewise, when he says on February 12, 1984, 3 days prior to admission to Palo Verde Hospital, quote, "When she said Jeff acts retarded," and that's a reference to Mrs. Morris, "she got me worried that she might think bad things about me. I'm very concerned about this. This makes me nervous and tense. This gives me worries beyond belief. I worry about what people think after I talk to them, especially when I talk to them a lot. I hope my thoughts aren't true. I pray to God they aren't true. This is my main concern. I'm very, very worried," end quote. I think that's a very odd construction.
Okay, guys, the electric company's here, and they have to do something that's going to cause the power to go out for like 5 minutes. So I'm not going to end the stream. I'm just going to leave it and hope when the power comes back on that the stream is still there. You guys are going to have to entertain yourselves for about 5 minutes, okay? Robbie. So, for about 5 minutes. I'm not touching anything, and hopefully when the computer comes back on, I can go back to StreamYard and everything will keep. Wait, let me see where this timestamp, where we are. He's like, you've got a surge protector, and it's like 15 years old, and we need to put a new one on there. I didn't break it, it's old. And apparently I'm paying for it. Oh, wait, we're like on timestamp 307. We could just start this part over, I guess. 3 minutes. Which part is this, though? Is the part 9. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go tell him it's okay to turn the power off now.
Now, or you want to resume with the case? You said after lunch you might want to.
Yes, I decided not to.
All right, there'll not be a request to visit the scene. Okay, you may proceed, Ms. Barkley.
So, Doctor, when we left off before the lunch break, I had asked you to look at the school letters to review how many mentions of voices in his head telling him to kill you were able to find, and if so, when the mention was made. And this was with regard to the diagnosis of Dr. Mayer back in 1984. Did you have an opportunity to do that, sir?
Actually, I thought you'd ask me to look for references to voices prior to the hospitalization. I didn't recall it was about voices commanding him to kill.
Well, why don't you tell me what you found?
I found 3 instances prior to the hospitalization, among all the other signs and symptoms of mental illness, that seem to be related to the experience of hallucinations. The first was on January 26, 1984, more than 2 weeks prior to admission to Palo Verde Hospital, when he wrote, quote, "Right now, I feel I'm writing to God."
No, wait, excuse me, doctor. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I asked you to check out voices in, excuse me, but
He may be getting to that. I haven't memorized the letters. Let's let him answer.
this is not responsive to my question, Your Honor. I'm
It
going
may
to.
be, he hasn't finished the answer. If it isn't, then we'll deal with it at such time as it is not. You may answer, sir. Finish what you were saying.
The quotation is, "Right now, I feel I'm writing to God. It seems like I'm angry all sudden. When I write to myself and feel like I'm talking to God. As evil as I am, I feel like I'm talking to the devil." End quote. Since that is the same content that he later in hospital records reports as hallucinating, I think when he says that he feels he's talking to God or feels that he's talking to the devil, he's describing the same subjective experience. Whether that experience is aptly characterized as hallucinations or in whatever terms, I think that's the same experience. Likewise, when he says on February 12, 1984, 3 days prior to admission to Palo Verde Hospital, quote, "When she said Jeff acts retarded," and that's a reference to Mrs. Morris, "she got me worried that she might think bad things about me. I'm very concerned about this. This makes me nervous and tense. This gives me worries beyond belief. I worry about what people think after I talk to them, especially when I talk to them a lot. I hope my thoughts aren't true. I pray to God they aren't true. This is my main concern. I'm very, very worried," end quote. I think that's a very odd construction that he hopes his thoughts are.
Thoughts and hearing voices are two completely different things. Because I know what he's talking about, because back when I had I still have a little bit of anxiety, but back when it was really, really bad, I could have a conversation with someone, and if I thought it didn't go well, I would replay that conversation over in my head, and I'd be like, why did I say this? Why? Well, I still do it sometimes. Why did I say this? I was so stupid. Debbie, you're an idiot. Why did I talk about this? Why did I talk about that? So I think what he just said about his thoughts, I think that's what he's talking about. But thoughts, thinking, oh, I shouldn't have said this, or that person probably didn't like me, that's completely different than hearing voices. And he didn't understand the assignment that Marcia gave him. That's what I think.
Aren't true. People will sometimes say, I hope my fears don't come true. I hope that what I thought happened isn't true. But to say, I hope my thoughts aren't true, suggests to me that he's having some kind of mental experience other than most of us undergo. And most significantly, on February 15th, the very day of admission, prior to being taken to the hospital, he wrote in reference to his home, because he says earlier he's at home, "I just sit there like a vegetable, sitting up in my bed, hearing little noises that torture me. I'm being tortured. Pains in my head cause me to do stupid things. I just sit and sigh. I get constantly tortured," end quote. Now, while he did not use the word voices until perhaps the 27th was the date, he is in each of those passages describing the same kinds of mental experiences that later get described in relation to hallucinations. And indeed, the first time that the word voices is used is a passage that's related thematically to all the other things he'd written about before the hospitalization, namely the passage on February 27th, after discharge from the hospital, when he writes, "I hear voices in my head to kill, like it's giving me orders to kill. That causes me to want to kill. Evil thoughts in my mind that won't leave. I feel disturbed and can't concentrate." He'd said the rest of those things beforehand, he just hadn't referred to them as voices.
All right, doctor. Now, in the letters prior to admission to the hospital, you will concede that at no time did he say that he heard voices speaking to him, telling him to kill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that the references to thoughts that you have made, sir, do not speak of the external source voices ordering him to kill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you made reference to the January 26th letter in which you said, "I write to myself and feel like I'm talking to God," he does not say in that sentence, "I am talking to God," does he?
No, he just says he feels like it.
And he does not say that he is talking to the devil. He says he feels like he's talking to the devil. Isn't that correct?
Precisely.
Now, when someone says to you, "I'm talking to God," that may or may not present evidence of pathology or psychosis. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when someone says to you, "I am talking to the devil," that may or may not present evidence of psychosis. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
In fact, people who are very normal often do speak in those terms, do they not?
No.
How about religious people, doctor, who say, for example, "I'm with God"? Is that psychotic?
They don't talk about speaking to the devil.
Have you never listened to a television evangelist speaking to Satan and ordering him hence?
Not a normal one.
That's your determination that he's not normal. Is that correct?
That's my experience on TV evangelists.
Well, other than your subjective viewpoint, have you ever conducted a clinical interview with a television evangelist?
No.
Have you ever performed a specific professional diagnosis of a television evangelist?
No.
And when they speak of the fact that they are speaking to Satan or speaking to God in the course of their speech, it may simply be illustrative, may it not?
You'd have to ask them.
I'm asking you, sir.
Because it seems that's not an evidence that there are these evangelists that the district attorney is putting forward who have experienced this.
Overrule that, the doctor has said that normal evangelists do not
They don't kill people!
speak to the devil or feel like they're speaking to the devil, whatever the phrase was. And I think this is legitimate cross-examination to
No,
test the
and people like
basis for
me
that
say
opinion.
not say Satan. I don't like this man
If
even
you
more
hear a
now.
television evangelist say, "Get thee hence, Satan, I'm talking to you, devil, I'm talking to you, Satan,"
Yes, they
are
do.
you qualified then to conclude from that that television evangelist is psychotic?
Well, a great deal will be presupposed, but if that's not metaphoric speech, then it would be indicative of some problem or other. But the real point here is that one doesn't make that judgment in isolation about them or Mr. Bardo. One makes the judgment in the context of all of the other signs and symptoms.
Well, I agree, doctor, but let's address this one right now. So when Mr. Bardo says, "I feel like," what form of speech is that?
Pray for this
Is that a
man.
simile?
Yes, it is.
And so when someone gives you a simile, that is not necessarily evidence of psychotic thinking, is it?
No, it isn't.
And when you pointed to the letter on the day of his admission where he talked about hearing noises that irritated him, those may well have been the noises of babies crying in the house, may they not?
I know those were among the noises he complained of.
So that he was complaining of feeling irritated by external noise that he identified as external noise at the time he wrote that letter. Isn't that true, sir?
Not in that passage, no. But he had often complained of external noises.
The letter that you are pointing to, sir, this is your handwritten notes from
That's
that
the
letter?
passage I'm referring to.
Is there anything that you read into this passage that allows you to conclusively state now that he was not referring to noises that were present in the house at the time?
From that passage alone, no. And in fact, even with everything in context, I don't think one could say for certain. But I do think it's a reference to the same experiences that are later referred to as hallucinations.
But they may not be. Isn't that correct, doctor? They may be simply referring to noises in the house that are disturbing to him, as they have been before.
Well, they're not simply that. He's talking about intolerable pain and being tortured by little noises in his head and by pain in his head. That's not just simply a little noise around the house. It's something else.
He is complaining of noises that are bothersome to him that may indeed exist, though. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And if he is complaining of noises that do in fact exist, then he is not delusional. Isn't that correct? He is not hallucinating the noises. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, what I asked you to do, doctor, is determine whether prior to his hospitalization there was any sentence in a letter that indicated his complaint of voices talking in his head or from an external source. And from your answer, I was able to discern that there was not,
That's correct. There are only these references.
which you interpret to be significant psychologically as possible evidence of psychosis, but is not an express reference to voices. Is that correct?
That's correct.
One possible explanation for that, doctor, is that there were not voices that he was complaining about until after his hospitalization. Isn't that true?
That's true. That's a possibility.
Then 2 days after he was discharged from the hospital, he makes reference in the February 25th letter to voices that told him to kill.
I'm afraid I didn't see those. I saw them in the February 27th letter.
Excuse me, February 27th. Thank you. Do you have that letter in front of you?
Yes.
Now, in that letter, he makes the express statement. Let me make sure they're on the same page. Okay. I hear voices in my head to kill, like it's giving me orders to kill. That causes me to want to kill. You have that statement also.
Yes.
Now, isn't it true, doctor, that in order to be an auditory hallucination, clinically speaking, shouldn't the voice emanate from an external source?
That should be the perception, yes.
And shouldn't the perception also be de novo? That is, it is not an illusion based upon some external noise that actually exists. An example would be if you sit in a closed room and you perceive, while you sit there alone, but there's no noise around, that a voice emanates from the plug, from the electrical outlet, and says, jerk. That would be an auditory hallucination, would it not?
That would probably be malingering, but that kind of experience is more hallucination-like than others, yes.
Okay. So when somebody complains of voices inside their head, clinically speaking, that is not an indication of an auditory hallucination, is it?
Well, it may or may not be, but the experience that the patient has with classic auditory hallucinations is that the voices seem to emanate from outside, at least at the onset of the illness.
So clinically speaking, when you diagnose a patient as having true auditory hallucinations, you do expect to hear some description from the patient that they are external in source, correct?
Yes.
Now, this line that we have just read together from the letter on February 27th does not appear on its face to indicate an external source. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in the abstract, doctor, isn't it true that even in a clinical setting, a psychiatrist may unwittingly plant a suggestion for a symptom simply by routine admitting procedures, such as, do you hear voices? Do you have visual hallucinations? Do you see things? That sort of thing. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is.
So if a prospective patient is asked whether or not he hears voices, he may well adopt the suggestion and agree that he does, when in fact he does not. That can happen, can it not?
It can happen, yes.
And there may be a variety of reasons why he'd be so motivated, like the desire for attention, or to please the doctor, or to accommodate what he thinks he should be doing, performing according to plan. Isn't that possible?
Yes, it is.
And as a matter of fact, with this defendant in particular, we have a young boy who had vehemently been demanding attention for quite some time, and especially at the time he was admitted. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And it's kind of understandable in that he was one of 7 children, is it not?
Yes, that would be one of the reasons.
And in fact, that is indeed what he told Dr. Mayer when he was admitted, didn't he?
I know he said that he wanted more attention. I
Yes.
don't know what you're referring to.
I'm just referring to the line in the report that we already earlier looked at. I'll show it to you as I'm reading it, so you know what I'm talking about. The patient said he had had this problem all his life, and he blames his mother because she doesn't care or pay attention to him.
Right.
Okay. So he was complaining to everyone who would listen that he wasn't getting enough attention at that time, including his school counselors. Isn't that true?
He complained of many things. That was among them.
Why? I come back to this slide.
Now, do you think that the problem of suggestibility, that is, that a patient may have a symptom that he had not previously truly experienced, suggested to him by the admitting process of questioning, do you think that problem might be particularly acute in a child desirous of attention?
That could be.
Okay. Did you ever consult with a child psychologist in this particular case to determine whether that might be in evidence here?
Not on that issue. On some other issues I did.
You're referring to the physical testing?
Right.
Okay. By the way, while you mentioned that, did you ever get the blood test back?
I can't even determine if the blood tests were ever done, but I haven't seen the results.
So Dr. Mayer may well have ascribed that report of auditory hallucination to suggestive questioning and possibly the patient's desire for attention or desire to accommodate. Is that possible, doctor?
It's possible.
And perhaps even Dr. Mayer found through further probing that that when the patient reported auditory hallucination, upon further questioning and probing, he determined that they were not of a psychotic nature, perhaps just voices inside the head with no external source attributed by the patient. Isn't that also possible?
It's possible.
Now, in the Tucson psychiatric report, it's indicated that the patient reports the voices to be of recent origin within the last 2 and sometimes 3 months.
That's my recollection, yes.
Now, by the time he went to Tucson Psychiatric Institute, it was well over a year since he'd been in Palo Verde Hospital. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, by the time he went to Tucson Psychiatric Hospital, sir, he had read up on psychology, had he not?
He had read something in psychology, yes.
That's reflected in the letter on February 27th, the same letter where he writes about voices in his head telling him to kill.
Right.
Now, other than this one passage, sir, on February 27th about voices telling him to kill, after that point, were you able to find any other letter in which the defendant wrote specifically, literally, of voices speaking to him in his head, telling him to kill?
I haven't looked for that. I was looking for the prior ones over the luncheon recess.
Okay.
I don't recall any examples of that offhand.
When we break tonight, if you would, Doctor, I'd appreciate it if you look through the rest of the letters to tell me if you ever find another sentence like the one in February 27th that we've just gone through. I hear voices in my head to kill. Okay? And at this moment, I do not believe there are. And if you're willing to agree with that, then I won't have to ask you to do any homework. But if you need to assure yourself, you will do that, will you not?
Well, it depends on how many assignments you give me. I have a busy evening scheduled already.
That's the only one. Okay. Now, at the time he was admitted to Tucson Psychiatric Institute, the defendant had just run away from a foster home where he had complained they didn't feed him enough and didn't treat him well, at least according to the report you referred to. Does that match with your memory, sir?
Yes.
He claimed at the time he was admitted to be hearing voices that ordered him to kill his baby nieces and to run away from his foster home, correct?
Before admission, that was the issue, yes.
And he is not reported, as far as we know, to have ever attempted to harm his nieces, is he?
No, he isn't.
In fact, he later denied any intent to do so and said that he loved them, didn't he?
Yes.
So the only thing that the voices at that time successfully compelled him to do is to leave a foster home where he wasn't particularly happy anyway. Isn't that correct?
Right.
Now, you've read in the statement of a social worker by the name of Guy Heidinger, Heidinger, at Desert Hills.
Yes, I did.
And that letter indicated that he was refusing the defendant admission because he was too dangerous.
Right.
Did you rely on his statements informing your opinion of this defendant's mental state at the time he was admitted to the hospitals, either Palo Verde or Tucson Psychiatric?
Did I rely on what?
On this report that you read into evidence, sir. You mentioned this report and you read selected pieces from it in your direct testimony.
Right. But you asked if I relied on that informing an opinion as to his mental state at the time of something that preceded that.
Yeah, what I was referring to at the time of either his admission to Palo Verde or Tucson Psychiatric.
I'm afraid I don't understand. I did rely on that informing my opinion about his mental state and his condition.
His condition at what time?
His condition at that time.
That's what I was referring to.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
You relied on this report then in forming your opinion, I don't want to say diagnosis exactly, but informing your opinion of his mental state back in 84 and 85.
That's right, and more particularly about his home situation.
Okay. Now, this guy, Guy Heidinger, he's not a psychiatrist to the best of your knowledge, is he?
I think it's a social worker.
Is there any indication in this report that he ever even laid eyes on the defendant?
No.
Do you think it's appropriate, doctor, to utilize the opinion of social workers who've never met the patient at all in forming your opinions?
It's done all the time. How much reliance one places on them depends on the quality of their logic or what evidence they marshal, and that varies. But this is something that one often is in a position to do, to rely on the views of people from other mental health disciplines.
Yeah, you definitely, as a routine matter, have to rely occasionally on the reports of others. I understand that, doctor. What I'm referring to is the report of someone who's never met the patient himself, who seems to be only responding to reports given to him by others who may or may not have met the defendant. So what you may be relying on here is third or fourth hand hearsay with no personal observation. Do you think that that's an appropriate thing to base your diagnosis or opinion on?
I think as long as one understands what it is, that it's to be taken for what it's worth.
I have no idea.
And what exactly is that worth, doctor?
Well, this was a real event in his life, that he was turned down for admission to a program for the emotionally handicapped because of at least the perception that he was too dangerous, even at that age, to take. I think that goes to the fact that however that perception developed, he was perceived as an abnormal young man, too abnormal to even be in the emotionally handicapped program. And that says something. That says that he wasn't just someone who was trying to get out of trouble or someone who was really normal, but sometimes pretending to be sick when it suited his purposes. I think it goes to the point that he was abnormal even then.
Well, granted, doctor, except that what you're telling me then is that you're accepting the opinion of a social worker who's never met the defendant and has formed opinions based on reports, which we don't know what they are, on his own. So we have an unknown source for his opinion, but one thing we know for sure is it's not based on personal observation. So all you have is a hearsay characterization based on unknown source hearsay. Isn't that correct?
Well, not exactly. I mean, I rely on defendants' history of convictions, even though the court that convicted them may never have seen the crime or have anything other than secondhand knowledge of it. I mean, there are varying degrees to which things can be confirmed. And taking that for what it's worth, I think it remains the case that he was perceived at that time as a troubled young man, too troubled for that program. I don't want to read any more than that into it. I'm not taking it for what it's worth with respect to any diagnosis or any particular signs and symptoms. I'm not even sure that it shows he was dangerous. I think there's better evidence of that. But it does show that there was a problem.
Yes, yet you read portions of his report into the record, doctor. If you did not find those portions of the report significant, then why did you read them?
I read many things in the record, and I think it is significant in the respect that it says something about how he was perceived at the time. It can't be taken for
it was significant in terms of...
Your Honor, I would request that the district attorney allow Dr. Dietz to finish the answers.
All right. Dr. Dietz has been a little bit non-responsive and over-explaining. I'm going to allow latitude on both sides, both Dr. Dietz to explain, and if occasionally Ms. Clark or you interrupt for the purpose of getting back to the track. Frankly, I think we're beating this to death. I don't place a great deal of reliance on that, except to show that the defendant was odd. I know very well, and I might even ask the doctor this, doctor, isn't it frequent that some of these organizations that have the public charge of taking care of children sometimes reject people because of administrative reasons and then rationalize it by saying, oh, this gentleman's too dangerous, if they have even the slightest reason to believe that, because they really think it'd be too much trouble.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. In that sense, I'm taking, but if you want to proceed, go ahead.
No, thank you. You made reference to a passage in one of these reports, doctor, that said the defendant was being forced to steal by his brother Ed. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you know the source of that statement? That Ed was teaching or forcing him to steal?
The source must be Robert Bardo, who says that in many contexts.
Okay. Did you ever attempt to determine whether there was any independent corroboration for that statement?
Well, of course, I read what was available from Ed Bardo, but he refused to cooperate with various people who tried to interview him, and so that wasn't as full set of interviews as I hoped to find.
Did you try to call and speak to Ed Bardo yourself?
No, when I was trying to talk to the family, he was arguing with them that they shouldn't come testify and they should stay out of it. I could only overhear him in the background.
So you did not make an effort to call him yourself?
No, I didn't try to break through that particular barrier.
Can you find any person in these records, in these previous school records, who did attempt to verify that by talking to Ed Bardo or any other person who could corroborate that accusation by the defendant?
No.
Might it not just be an expression of sibling hostility or jealousy by the defendant? Isn't that possible, doctor?
That he accuses his brother, I suppose it's possible.
Now, you also testified that staff members in the hospital thought the defendant's mother and brother are both schizophrenic. You read a passage in that his mother was paranoid schizophrenic. I think that was on page Page 63 of the transcript. Yes. I'll show you mine. Page 63. The staff members at the hospital thought that his mother and his brother might both be schizophrenic. His mother was thought to be a paranoid schizophrenic.
Yes.
Doctor, who are these staff members you're referring to?
I'll have to look at the hospital chart to see.
Maybe I can assist you. I'm looking at one of the reports prepared at Tucson Psychiatric Institute. This was the only reference I could find to the statement you made. You see the part highlighted?
Yes, I do.
Is that the source?
That's one source, and I understand that would be hearsay from the state agency, but I don't think that was the only source of this.
There was one other reference you read in by Kurt Holman. And there's some highlighted portion here. I will be reading these into the record, Your Honor, and perhaps that's what you're referring to?
Yes, that would be one. And then there was someone at one of the hospitalizations who interviewed Mrs. Bardo. Perhaps that was that same person.
Yes. So, Doctor, to go back now and make it clear for the record what we are referring to, you indicated on page 63 that there were staff members at the hospital that thought that the defendant's mother and brother might be schizophrenic, and that his mother was thought to be a paranoid schizophrenic. And the source of that statement comes from the Tucson psychiatric report that states, as I quote, Deb Kirk and Rob Wilson report that the patient comes from a family that is pathological and dysfunctional in nature. Mother and brother are both said to be schizophrenic. Who are Deb Kirk and Rob Wilson?
Well, Rob Wilson, I think, was from the state agency that handles foster home placements. I don't know who the woman is.
So Rob Wilson is not a staff member of Tucson Psychiatric Institute.
No, but the psychiatrist who had admitted him was quoting that. That's what you're reading from, I believe, is the psychiatrist's typed report. And so I assumed that he relied on that as a source of information since he quoted from it.
I'm not talking about that, Doctor. I'm talking about your statement in court. You referred to those people as staff members at the hospital who allegedly thought that the mother and brother were schizophrenic. Did you not? Those are your words I'm reading back.
Yes, then and if those are the only ones who use that terminology, then that's what I was referring to.
So neither one of them, as far as you know, are actually staff members of the hospital. Isn't that correct?
Neither of those two, just the person who quotes them.
Just the person who quotes them.
And just the other person, Mr. Holman.
And Mr. Holman is just a social worker, is that correct?
Right, and he and the psychiatrist are staff members at the hospital.
Correct. But as far as you know, Deb Kirk and Rob Wilson are not, and might be candy stripers in high school, for all you know.
No, I believe Mr. Wilson works for the state agency.
And Deb Kirk?
I don't know who she is.
Needless to say, then, you neither spoke to either one of them, is that correct?
That's right.
And you're relying solely upon this statement here in this report for that testimony in court, is that correct?
Exactly.
So basically what you did was you read into the record a report that was third hand from unknown persons whom you've never interviewed, one of whom you have no idea who they are, whose qualifications in this regard, psychiatrically speaking, may be non-existent, as a basis for part of your diagnosis of this defendant?
That was the only basis for believing that staff members at the hospital thought that the parents were schizophrenic. I have, of course, other bases for my views on that matter. And yes, that played whatever part it played in my diagnosis.
On the other hand, Kurt Holman, who personally did interview Mrs. Bardo, stated, aside from elements of paranoia, Mrs. Bardo did not appear to have any overt psychotic symptoms or thought disorders. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And that's a statement from someone who actually at least met her and sat down and spoke to her face to face. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Well, I don't know about face to face. I think this was the interview where she wouldn't take her sunglasses off.
Her face was in front of him, though, wasn't it, Doctor?
The rest of it was, yes.
Now, in the Tucson psychiatric report, you listed his reports of auditory hallucination and one report of a visual hallucination, correct?
In which?
Tucson Psychiatric Institute.
Yes, that's right.
And I noticed when you gave your differential diagnosis that you did not rely on the reported visual hallucination for your ultimate diagnosis, did you?
That's correct.
And you indicated that you saw no evidence of visual hallucination in this defendant either in 1989 or in 1991. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
And you have no evidence at this time, to the best of your knowledge, of any organic disorder that would account for the report of visual hallucination back in 1985.
That's right.
And isn't it true that the nature of the visual hallucination reported is not of the type that is typically reported by schizophrenics?
That's right.
Did you consider the possibility then that the visual hallucination report given by the defendant in 1985 was simply untrue?
Yes.
Might that not have been a product of his exposure to other inpatients at the hospital or to suggestive questioning by psychiatrists?
It could be, though I think there's a more likely explanation. Those are certainly possible.
And what is the more likely explanation you find?
I tend not to rely on single occurrences in nursing notes because sometimes an entry is made on the wrong chart by mistake and not caught. And so when I find only a single out of character mention of a particular symptom, I always have to wonder whether it was just charted in the wrong chart.
So that's another possibility.
Yes.
Could it also be an illusion that was interpreted as a visual hallucination?
Yes, Your Honor, it could be.
When someone is told that they are mentally ill, if they are, wouldn't they be more likely to interpret an illusion as a hallucination because of their expectations due to the diagnosis? If they report something as a visual hallucination.
Would the patient be more likely or the staff?
Let's, both. What about the patient himself? If a patient reports a visual hallucination, is there a possibility that it may be an illusion? As you know, that's a misinterpretation of an actual stimulus that may somehow resemble some other object that they take to be that object. Would their expectations due to being diagnosed as a schizophrenic, if they have knowledge of it, color their own interpretation of that illusion?
I'm not sure about that. I know that they certainly may mislabel it and may have picked up a label and misapply it. But whether the expectation transforms their experience, I doubt. It may well transform their label.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not talking about transforming if they report a visual hallucination, could that not, the reporting of the hallucination, could it not arise out of the process that I've described?
Yes, it could.
All right. Proceed.
However, is it also possible that as a product of being an inpatient, perhaps enjoying the attention, that the report may have also been just a false report by the defendant?
Yes, that could be.
In which case you might have some evidence in that aberrant report of visual hallucination of malingering or at least suggestibility. Isn't that possible?
Or some other source of unreliability, yes.
But among all those explanations exists the possibility of malingering or suggestibility. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Did you also read in the I think it was in the Tucson psychiatric report, where the defendant claimed to have overdosed by taking 6 aspirin in 24 hours?
Yes.
Okay, you're smiling. I take it you understand then, doctor, that that is not in fact a life-threatening overdose.
All suicide attempts should be that way.
Yes. Because none would be serious then, is that correct?
None would be lethal.
None would be lethal. And did you also notice in the school report that you referred to that on, I believe it was March the 12th, 1984, the defendant arrived at school in the morning and claimed to have overdosed? Do you recall this?
I don't recall where that is.
The portion that's highlighted in my report. I'll read it for the record while you're reading it. On March the 12th, Robert came into the office to report he was quote-unquote overdosed and concerned about himself. He was checked by the school nurse who ascertained that he was in no immediate danger.
Yes.
Okay. He was not after that. He was then released to his father, correct?
Yes.
And he was not admitted to any hospital to the best of your knowledge, was he?
Correct.
And out of all of the reports of suicidal ideation and allegedly suicidal gestures, doctor, do you have any evidence to indicate that the defendant was ever hospitalized as a result of any of these alleged attempts?
I don't believe he was, no.
Doctor, can an adolescent who feels neglected make suicidal gestures in an effort to get attention?
Yes.
And might that not have been one of the possible reasons that this defendant was making those suicidal gestures, quote unquote?
Yes.
So that, as I understood your testimony, then while you do believe that the defendant had auditory hallucinations back in 84 and 85, you cannot say with any reasonable medical certainty that he had any command hallucinations at the time of the murder. Is that correct?
Oh, that is correct.
And in fact, given what the defendant told you about having considered killing Rebecca Schaeffer for a long time prior to that day, and attaching the condition precedent of her being mean to him as a necessary justification for killing her, and the fact that he failed to do so at the first visit, isn't that strong evidence that he was not, in fact, operating under a command hallucination at the time of the murder that day?
Would you repeat the question once, please?
You want to have it read or you want to repeat it?
I'm going to try and repeat it. Given what the defendant told you about having considered killing Rebecca Schaeffer for a long time prior to that day, and attaching the condition precedent to the killing of her being mean or arrogant, as he put it, to him as necessary to the justification of killing her, and the fact that he failed to do so at the first visit, when he first went to her door that day, isn't that strong evidence that in fact he was not operating under a command hallucination on that day?
Well, without adopting the language about the precedent condition, I'm not sure what you're saying about the condition that's required as a justification. But the facts to which you allude, I think, are an indication that he did not experience a command hallucination that day. I would expect him to have told me had he done so.
In fact, you might have expected him to at least have told that to Dr. Stahlberg, or maybe even to the police officers, had he been operating under a command hallucination that day.
To someone, I should think, yes.
Because people operating under such a command hallucination are fairly forthcoming about it, are they not?
No, not always. There was a condition we found at Bridgewater. We were trying to understand the phenomenon of sucker punchers, men who would divert a guard's attention and then hit them out of the blue. And as we talked to the patients about it, eventually learned that what was usually happening was secret command hallucinations to strike the guards that they'd never shared with anyone, and which made these particular incidents hard to predict. So I can't endorse that, but I would have expected after his arrest and with the multiple interviews and the opportunity to talk to people that he at some point would have, if that were key to him.
And it did not.
Not to my knowledge.
And you have no reason to believe that the phenomena you've just described with the sucker punches is in evidence here.
Correct.
And when he went, so he
Just a
went.
moment, Ms. Clark, do you wish to change now? All right, thank you. All right, proceed.
So when the defendant went to her door for the first time that day, when he did have a gun and bullets, but made no effort to shoot her at that first visit, given that state of preparedness, if he had been operating under a command hallucination, would you not have expected him to kill her at that first visit, Dr. Hunt?
It would depend on what the voice said at that particular time. It could command him not to.
But do you have any evidence that there was any command in operation at that time?
I don't know.
And you would have expected him to speak of that command when he was arrested, at least to Dr. Stahlberg, would you not, in a clinical interview setting?
I just expect at some point he would have. From what he told me, I gather he became defensive with Dr. Stahlberg, and that might have made him more likely to mention it at whatever point that occurred.
And he did not.
Correct.
All right, then. You cannot say that when he approached her door the first time that he was operating under a command hallucination, can you?
No.
And you cannot say that when he left her door the first time he was operating under a command hallucination, can you?
No.
And you cannot say that when he returned the second time he was operating under a command hallucination, can you?
No.
And you cannot say that when he shot her he was operating under a command hallucination either, can you?
No, I can't, and I didn't.
Would you agree that a bizarre motivation for killing is not in itself evidence of psychosis or serious mental disorder?
I do agree.
And wouldn't you agree that other than some notable examples, and I'm just going to throw one out, other than a contract killer, for example, that most people would find the reasons or justifications given for killing to be unacceptable?
Yes.
So the fact that the defendant may have wanted to kill Rebecca Schaeffer if she was arrogant or because he felt she rejected him is not in itself evidence of a mental disorder or defect, is it?
No, that isn't.
In fact, wouldn't the shooting of a president to impress an actress appear to be a little bizarre to you?
Yes.
But you didn't find that Hinckley suffered from a mental disease or defect that precluded his ability to deliberate or plan his actions, did you?
No.
And in fact, in the Hinckley case, sir, didn't you actually testify that you felt that his goal was indeed reasonable because he achieved it?
Language I've since learned to regret, but yes, I did give that testimony.
Well, if we refer to your research, isn't it true that you actually found that the real motivation behind these celebrity stalkers, sir, was actually for the fame and notoriety that they would attain?
That's a piece of it. It's the union with something special, important, and famous. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they perceive it as becoming famous themselves. Sometimes it's just as affirmation of the specialness they feel already, so that there's no expectation of external recognition. But there's always something along those lines.
Now, this defendant, though, you've read all his writings and letters to the school counselors and things of that nature. Aren't they fairly permeated with a desire for fame and attention?
Yes, there's quite a bit of that.
Wouldn't you agree? Then in this particular case, might it not be fair to say that there was a strong motivation there to attain fame by attachment to a famous figure?
I don't know whether he subjectively recognized it as that, but I think that that's one of the motivations underlying this.
Okay. Then if you apply that understanding to this particular case, might you not also say that this defendant's goal was indeed also reasonable because he did achieve it?
That's a mistake I'm not going to make again.
Now, you refer to the January 26, 1984 letter, Dr. Dietz, and you indicated in your testimony that you found evidence of what you call disassociation, and that there was a flight of ideas or a jumping of ideas from one thing to another, paragraph to paragraph. Do you recall saying that?
At which time?
You were referring to the first letter, and I find it'll be easier probably to do that. The January 26th letter, I think that was the first one in the series.
Oh, his high school writings?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Here it is.
Okay, so you have it now.
Yes.
You referred to that one, so I thought I would too for ease. Okay. Now you mentioned that he seemed to jump around from subject to subject. Do you recall that?
Yes, between paragraphs, I think I said.
Now, when he was told to write these letters by his counselor, Don Hickman, he was not told or given the instruction to write an essay for English, was he?
No,
And he was not told he was writing a book report, was he?
no.
In fact, doesn't he indicate on the first page, Doctor, you have it in front of you, do you know? He was told, at least we can glean from this following sentence, that he could write whatever he wanted. He said, I'm not writing to hurt people or make them feel bad like I was told. Write anything I want while I'm doing it. No one takes me seriously, et cetera, et cetera. So he was told basically just write whatever you feel. Doesn't it seem to be an accurate depiction of what he was told to do?
That's my understanding.
In that vein then, sir, might he not have felt free to simply free associate and write as he felt, when he felt, whatever he felt? Correct?
Yes.
He was not attempting to write in a structured manner. Is that correct?
I don't know, but I think it is more along the lines of free association.
Okay. Do normal people free associate, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. When you think to yourself sometimes, do you not jump from thought to thought in what would appear to a person on the outside as being non sequiturs?
Thinking often goes that way, yes.
And there's nothing abnormal in that, is there?
No.
In fact, you probably see the apparent connection where another person might not.
That's often the case, that one can perceive the connections internally.
Okay. So one explanation that does exist, Doctor, is that you have a jump of idea from paragraph to paragraph because that's exactly what he's doing, free associating his thoughts as they come to him without any attempt to be structured.
That's right.
Okay. And within each paragraph, at least, you do find some cohesion in topic, do you not?
Yes.
Now, he indicates in that line that I just stopped reading at, no one takes me seriously, he indicates a desire for attention. Does he not?
Yes.
Is it not also possible, Doctor, that he is saying the most bizarre thing he can think of in an effort to make a bid for attention?
Could be.
And in fact, he told you that he was trying to get the attention of Mr. Hickman and Mrs. Morris, didn't he?
Yes.
Now, we talked earlier just a little bit about I feel like I'm writing to God, I feel like I'm talking to the devil. One plausible explanation of that might certainly be it's simply descriptive of his feelings at the time without being evidence of psychosis, is it not? That's a possible explanation also, is it not, Doctor?
Well, I think it is descriptive of his feelings at the time, and I don't think that that's normal. It's evidence of something disturbed about this young man.
But it may certainly not be psychosis. If indeed you want to say it's evidence of a disturbance, it's not necessarily evidence of a psychotic disturbance. Is that true?
I think that's true.
And it might even be an effort by the defendant to say something shocking to the adults reading it. In other words, he may not really feel like he's talking to God, or may not really feel like he's writing to the devil. He's just saying so to get attention. That's possible too, is it not?
It is, and certainly he does that other places.
Yes, he admits in certain places that he makes threats to kill to get attention, doesn't he?
Yes.
And he says that right up front, doesn't he?
At front of what?
I meant, that's kind of a slang term, Doctor. I mean,
Oh, yes, he
he
does.
says that right in the open, doesn't he?
Sure.
Okay. Now, there's an evidence also in this writing, if you could turn to the page, second. Do you have your copies on both sides, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. The next page, at the bottom here. Make sure it runs. There we go. People tell me to forget about her. You recall that?
Yes.
See that line? He's referring to Samantha Smith, is he not?
That's right.
Did that not give you some indication that he was not being encouraged to expect a relationship with her?
It Samantha Smith, that's right.
All right. We'll get back to that later. Now, later on, he goes into a discussion of George Orwell's 1984. Is that correct?
Yes.
And after discussing George Orwell's book 1984, which is a science fiction book, isn't it, Doctor?
Right.
And Brave New World, he discusses the concept of the Brave New World also.
Yes.
After that discussion of science fiction is when he mentions the table and paper before him as being a field of electrical impulses, and how can he be sure if this is reality?
Right.
Now, those observations concerning what's reality, following as they do after the discussion of 1984, might simply be an adolescent waxing philosophical. Isn't that also an equally plausible explanation, sir?
Well, I don't know if it's equally plausible, but it is possible.
What about the possibility that they might have read something scientific, or had a lecture in class in which he was told that matter is indeed composed of electrical pulses, so to speak?
If I were shown evidence of that, I'd find it very persuasive that he was borrowing it from that.
Isn't it rather commonplace to teach the atomic theory at a very superficial level in school?
I'm sure it is.
And that would be a superficial way of talking about protons, neutrons, electrons, and all the other myriad of so-called elementary particles that have been discovered since, I suppose, the 30s.
Could be, Your Honor, but
Well, what I'm asking you is, what is psychotic about that, given that it seems to be accurate?
getting caught up in it would be psychotic, Your Honor. He does not continue on with this theme at any length, and so I can't say he's caught up in it. But this is the sort of thing that is very troublesome to youngsters who are mentally ill. It's a
Okay, we're going to end this one.